না
না না মিস্টার আচার্য আমাদের প্রেসিডেন্টের সাথে কথা হয়েছে
না
শুধু জারিনার সাথে কথা
হুম
আর 50 থেকে 60টা
Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone. May I please have everyone's attention, please? May I please have everyone's attention? Yes, it's 11:15. We are good to start the program. We have our chief guest and guest of honor already present. So I request everyone to kindly take your seats so we may start with the program. Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to the Economic Summit of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. This is a very special event we are doing, concentrating on the 75 years of the Indo-US diplomatic economic relations. We have some very, very important people who have come amidst us today to grace the program and also be our panelists. But I would first want to have the inauguration lamp lighting done. I would request our regional president, Mr. Anup Acharya, to please come up on stage. Mr. Kapil Kaul, National President IICC, to also accompany him. I would request Ms. Vandana Yadav, Industry Secretary, our chief guest for the evening, to please come up on stage, and Ms. Melinda Pavek, the Honorable US Consul General, to please come up on stage for the inaugural lamp lighting so that we can begin the program. Please put a good hand together for them. Can we have a round of applause for the inauguration ceremony as it begins, please? Thank you so much. I would please request all of you to kindly take your seats on the stage. Please, Melinda. I would now request IICC Regional President Mr. Anup Acharya to kindly come up and give us the welcome speech. Mr. Acharya, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and honor for me to welcome all dignitaries present over here today to celebrate the journey of 75 years of our independence. I welcome our chief guest, Honorable Chief Secretary of Industry and Commerce, Mrs. Vandana Yadav, and Honorable Consulate General of United States of America at Kolkata, Ms. Melinda Pavek, and also thank for accepting our request to inaugurate the event. Thank you. I welcome our speakers of the summit, Dr. D. Subbarao, former RBI Governor, Mr. D.K. Joshi, Chief Economist, CRISIL Limited, Mr. Debashish Sen, MD HITCO, Government of West Bengal. He is on his way, will be late, I think, by half an hour. That's what he just messaged me. Mr. Chandrasekhar Ghosh, CMD, Bandhan Bank. Welcome, sir. Mr. Sanjeev Paul, he is also on his way, Vice President, Tata Steels Limited. Mr. Sutitra Bhattacharya, former CMD, Coal India Limited. Mr. Nirupam Chaudhary, Director, Eastern Region, NASSCOM. And moderator, rather I would call a navigator of the session, Professor Dr. Suman Mukherjee. Welcome, sir. We, ISCC, EIC, through this summit, trying to take forward the Indo-US relationship in context to development, to trade and commerce of Eastern region. West Bengal has all potential to nurture this relationship for the economic growth and development of the region as a whole. With today's event, we will try to go through the lanes which two democracies, largest and oldest, have traveled together holding economic relationship. Trade and business always been a key factor of political relationship. In modern world, economic standards and positions of nations decides the strategic relationship. It is the time to introspect, evaluate, and the evolution of Indo-US relationship of 75 years in terms of socio-economic development with future perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you all will enjoy today's deliberation. The eminent panelists will take you through the journey with future perspective, strengthening the bond of Indo-US relationship. I once again welcome you all in today's summit. Thank you very much for coming down over here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Acharya. I would now request our National President, Mr. Kapil Kaul, to please come and give the inaugural remarks. Sir, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our honored guests and our chief guest, in fact, Ms. Melinda Pavek, Mrs. Yadav. Thank you for gracing this occasion and enabling us to make it more meaningful. Also to our esteemed panelists who have taken time off and taken the effort of coming down and flying down to Calcutta for this event. Thank you, sir, all of you. And in contributing to the knowledge and the priorities that guide our two countries, both India and United States of America, in the economic discipline. And of course, my friends and other people who've come here, the press also, to attend this event and to add value to Indo-American relations. Having said that, I would like to begin by saying that the elephant in the room is the environment. It's the most important element that guides our planet today. And some of you would be knowing, of course, of my E3 principle, which is the logo which is on next to our Indo-American Chamber logo, which is conservation of energy, conservation of ecology, and conservation of the environment. This could be, in fact, if we control 3 C's, which is crude oil, mass consumerism, and thirdly, what I call is circumstantial corruption, hyphenated incentive. These 3 C's should finally eliminate 1 W, which is waste. Waste of any kind, waste of time, waste of water, waste of oxygen, waste of especially plastics. Plastics are something that we got to get rid of from this planet. Within this, we must understand that our 2 democracies, India and United States of America, have had a kind of a sort of a seesaw relationship on maybe the political level, but on a personal level, there's always been a preference to having an affinity with the American system, whether it be education, whether it be soft issues like music, movies, knowledge, whether it be even in terms of scientific development. Definitely America is the repository of R&D, very, very core research, which has benefited, and not many people know that actually DARPA, which is DARPA, which is the sole entity that actually brings about all these technologies, is not entitled to charge a fee to an American entity or an American company. And so therefore you have all the cell phones in the world, you have Google, you have internet, all for free. Now that's American enterprise. Now we in India have still not actually harnessed the power of that R&D and the collaboration that we can do with United States of America. We are 2 democracies. We'll always argue. We'll always have differences. We should have differences, right? That's yin and yang, okay? And we must recognize that America is hardware. America is pragmatic. America is now, do it now, right? India is spirituality. India is like time is of hardly any essence. It goes from one lifetime to the next lifetime, right? But therein, and software is our forte, including managerial skills, which we all know. So both our countries, actually, if you look at it and go back in time, there are 3 instances, which I've mentioned before, where despite our differences, both of us came together and we solved huge problems for the planet. The first was Y2K, which I would say is the start of the knowledge era and the main affinity with which America and India came together and bonded together. The second is the GFC crisis, where India helped in solving the GFC crisis. And the third is in the pandemic right now, where we collaborated in making the vaccines. And again, you must understand that the core development of these vaccines could happen at that speed because of American research and quantum computing. And I must tell you that there's something else which all of you in this room, some would be knowing, some may not be knowing. But the Voyager program and the Pioneer program is something which we must note and understand. My father told me that if anything can be made encapsulated in a mathematical formula, it may not be real today, but it is the skeleton of truth which will become reality tomorrow. And he also said, did you go to the moon to find out what's the distance between the moon and the earth? No, you didn't. It's theory. It's mathematical theory. So with the slingshot effect, 9 volts of atomic energy have propelled the Voyager into billions of miles away from the Earth, and it has excelled even the expectations of its inventors and NASA, that they're still getting data from that. The reason why I'm saying this is very, very simple. I said in the beginning that the elephant in the room is the environment, right? Now, if the American system can actually make a Voyager spacecraft, and which lasts over 50 years, well, the same thing we can look inwards, and with our software skills, with our entrepreneurial abilities, and with our democratic leaning, India and America, with the hardware and software, can actually collaborate and, on the environmental front, bring about solutions of many kinds. And one of them, which I'm focusing on in Indo-American Chamber, and which is drones. And I'm happy to say that two entities have gone ahead of time and faster than me. One is that the government of India had completely changed the laws for drones and made it possible to make drones effective, right? And the second is that USAID has collaborated with an Indian company in Hyderabad, and it's already started delivering medicines by drones in remote areas in Arunachal Pradesh, right? And that's something which is really, really fast. So I take that as the seeds of which our economic development can come forward, and we must encapsulate this and make this the bedrock of our two countries. And I must say that I reflect back in time when Nixon and Kissinger went to China, and they made the leap of faith with communist China and made China is today what it is because of American technology, American business, and American market, right? And of course the American Fed Reserve, okay? Likewise, our two democracies, of course I know it's easy to deal with a dictatorship. You just got one guy to talk to and he does everything. It's not easy to deal with our country because many people talk many things, but therein lies the colors of our two civilizations. And I would say that leap of faith we must now take between America and India, and make environment and economic issues related to the environment. And also something else which we are focusing on in Indo-American Chamber is with the Value Reporting Foundation, bringing in accounting standards that will change and incorporate accounting including the environmental issues, wherein your cost of production will include the impact of your products on the environment. I think I've said enough, but I thank everybody for being here today for this important conclave, and especially Melinda and especially Mrs. Yadav, thank you. And of course, our panelists, distinguished panelists. We eagerly look forward to hearing your views on this very important subject, which I feel will take India forward and America forward. And, well, there's a saying, make in India. I say, India and America should make for the world in both the nations. We must be in tandem with each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kaul. I would now request our National President to please felicitate our Chief Guest, Mrs. Vandana Yadav, Honorable Industry Secretary. Sir, Mr. Kaul, if you can please felicitate Ms. Yadav on stage with a small memento that we have ready for her. For Mrs. Vandana Yadav, please put your hands together for the felicitation. take it from here. Put it in the box. Thank you so much. I would request our regional president, Mr. Anup Acharya, to please felicitate Ms. Melinda Pavik, the Honorable US Consul General, who's here today. Please put your hands together for them. Thank you so much. May I please request Mrs. Vandana Yadav, Secretary, Industry and Commerce, Government of West Bengal, to please come up and give us a few words on this event. Ma'am, if you may please.
Good morning, and I will stick to a few words only. Mr. Kaul, National President, AICC, Shri Acharya, Ms. Pavik, Consul General, USA, dignitaries. In fact, it's a little odd for me to be speaking from here because I have some of my most respected seniors. Debashis Sen sir, he's been my trainee DM. He has taught me where I am, taught me to function in the bureaucracy. So Tito Bhattacharya sir, again a very esteemed senior. Dr. Subha Rao sir, we've read your articles. We've been like, you're a legend for us, So Dr. Ghosh, people like this, to be speaking here, I would really want to restrict myself for fear of, not saying something which is not very proper. But thanks to AICC for holding the event. It, of course, is a very milestone year with 75 years of Indo-US economic relations. And when we talk of Indo-US relations or even Bengal-US relations, as my predecessor here was speaking, it is one of the places where we have the deepest connect, the people-to-people connect, the aspirational levels. America still remains a dream for most Indians. There's hardly an Indian family which does not have, hardly an urban Indian family which does not have a connector person in the US. So the ties are very, very deep. It is ideological, it is economic, it is familial, it is, as I said, cultural in terms of music. In fact, I think half of us keep cribbing about the fact that our children only listen to American music, only dress American, only talk American. But that is all at a very, very, I would say, personal and cultural level. The focus today, and maybe for all of us, whether we are as Industries Department, for IACC, for each one of you here, the focus is to take this cultural and personal relation to a much deeper, mature level of economic relations. How do we mutually benefit from the economic powerhouses that both these nations are? At different levels of the powerhouse capacity, but we are both great economic superpowers in our own way. How do we bring our synergies together to create something which adds to both of us? I think for us, that is which has become very, very important, and that is the main purpose, I think, of today's event, of how do we collaborate further. I generally, when I talk in business forums, talk about the strengths of Bengal in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the economic potential, in terms of our being the 5th or 6th largest state in terms of the consumer base. But there's no point talking of that here. All of you are already running businesses, are already in the economics where you know this opportunity. That is why the IACC, so there's no point of talking of that. So what is it that we need to talk of? I would talk of some very, very specific things, which I think, one, some food for thought, and some suggestions. The first and foremost what I want to talk of is that US is one of the top 5 destinations for merchandise exports from West Bengal. Despite this, it only adds to about 7.7% of all our goods, actually manufactured goods, go to US. So why should this just be 7.7%? Why can't we increase this? It's a very, very low figure. But this low figure, the important thing is that our exports of merchandise are actually growing with a rate of about 55%. That is the year-to-year growth. So when we have a growth potential of 55%, why should US be just 7.7% of our share? That is something, so that actually opens the, or at least tells us how much is the opportunity there for pure merchandise export. I'm not even getting into the services part of it. The products which are there, and in fact I'm very happy to see the companies present here, all the major sectors are represented: iron and steel, marine products, leather goods, jewelry, jute, aluminium products, ready-made cotton garments, textiles. These are the major areas of export, and I think there is huge potential still in increasing all of these. In terms of the American companies in India, or specifically in Bengal, I think from Instacart, Amazon, Pepsi, TCS, we have just about everyone here. The number of Indian companies in US is also steadily growing, and again making good investments there, actually having the tie-up. So what is it that we need to bring this collaboration to a much larger extent? I think a couple of things which are happening in the state are of interest. The first is the state's focus on logistics and transport development. We've always said that the Bengal's strength is its location. This location can be best used if we can actually build the logistics setup where the ease of logistics in terms of how easy it is for somebody to take their goods from one part to the other, whether Bengal can serve as the base for catering to the entire eastern, northeastern, not just India, but the entire ASEAN region. So for that, we are majorly working on the logistics sector. We have given logistics, or are in the process of giving logistics the status of an industry. The logistic development is one area where we can actually work a lot, and there I think we have huge potential of collaboration, because a lot of the US companies are looking at logistic developments and are keen on developing multimodal logistic parks, multimodal logistic facilities, infrastructure related to logistics, starting from port to smaller jetties. So I think this is one area where we can really look for collaboration. The second area, of course, IT and ITS, which is something which we're already doing very well, but again, where we can increase much more than what we already have. Mr. Kaul talked of the first C, which is the carbon or the polluting energy sources. So one very major area for us to interact with is shale gas and other non-renewable energy sources. Bengal is one of the few states where shale has been discovered. We have given licenses for commercial exploration. So this opens up a huge opportunity in terms of not just the exploration, but the materials and the equipment which has to go into such exploration. So that again is something which is a huge area opening up. And again, shale being US's strength is something which we can really look forward to, not just the technical guidance, but even supply of equipment, etc. Pharmaceuticals, again the collaboration during the COVID time was talked of. So pharmaceutical is something which we in the state are very keen to tap. We realize that we have not had the first movers advantage, but there are still vast gaps where we can address for manufacturing here. So medical equipment is something which I really want to stress on. We are very, very keen to develop medical equipment manufacturing in the state, and I would look forward to some companies collaborating on that space. Electrical vehicles and drones, which was talked of, not just the usage and the market for that, but its manufacturing. We are increasing the usage of both of these equipment. We would really want some manufacturing capacities, starting from maybe just assembling or technical transfers, and then going on to full-fledged manufacturing in these areas. Defense equipment is again something which I think we have a huge potential to collaborate. We are very keen to look at defense production collaborations. There is a defense corridor which has come up. We have somehow not in that, but we are very keen to collaborate on anything to do with defense equipment production, etc. So these are some of the areas which we have not been traditionally talking of, but we are very, very keen to facilitate, and would be very happy to work with any company exploring these opportunities, wanting to find business tie-ups in the state. We would be very, very happy to connect with them. Which brings me to the action points as to what are the specific action points, what can we do. One thing which I have a suggestion for, and which maybe the Indo-American Chamber could take up, is could we have a one-stop facilitation desk for any US company or a US partnership wanting to export in India. WBIDC under the Industries Department would be the nodal authority from the state government. We could have a facilitation desk in WBIDC. It could be a virtual platform. We would partner with, happily with Indo-American Chamber, anybody else you suggest, which could provide all sorts of information on new opportunities, the policy framework, take inputs, and maybe work towards making it easier for companies wanting to invest here. So be a one single point where all type of facilitation could be done, from information sharing to hand holding and getting permissions, etc. That is the first point of, I think, a takeaway which we could actually work on. The second thing, which in my capacity as CMD at WBIDC I have to mention, is the Bengal Global Business Summit. We've had a very good presence from US in the previous years, and we look forward to that increasing. I do not see the BGBS as an end or a stop of any collaboration or any exploration. I would say the BGBS is a milestone in a journey. That milestone helps us to complete action points which we need to do. It gives us a target by which we can actually work out practical things, by which we can actually announce something, and it provides a platform whereby the networking can happen. So taking these three aspects of BGBS, I would look forward to a delegation from the US, with a substantial component being the companies which are already in India, maybe not in the eastern region looking to expand in the east, companies which are looking at Bengal, or just companies which are thinking of expanding and are looking out for opportunities. I think it is a very good platform to explore the opportunities which are available. Again, we would be very happy to host the delegation, provide all support and collaboration which we can, and we look forward to more of such events, something concrete coming out of that, and a very good presence, not just at the event, but I think throughout. With that, I would wish the deliberations today huge success, and I'm sure we will have some very concrete takeaways from that. Thank you so much, and it's really been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Yadav. That was indeed very insightful, and I'm sure we have a few takeaways which we can certainly implement along with the consulate in tandem. Now I would please request Her Excellency Ms. Melinda Pavik to please come and say a few words for this event. Melinda, if you please.
Good morning, everyone. Excuse me. Mr. Acharya, Ms. Yadav, Mr. Kaul, distinguished members of the IACC, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful to be here today, and it is always difficult to follow three wonderfully eloquent speakers who talk about so many important things. They often steal my thunder about the things I'm going to discuss, so I hope that I am able to keep your attention. I am so grateful to the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to celebrate the 75 years of the economic relationship between the United States and India. But as we all know, that relationship is much longer and much stronger, especially here with Kolkata. In 2022, we are celebrating 230 years of a diplomatic presence. Of course, Benjamin Joy was the first US consul to Kolkata, and he was sent by our first US President, George Washington. He was nominated in 1792. Unfortunately, he didn't arrive in Kolkata until 1794, because even then, US government bureaucracy was really long and complicated. But US-India relations at 75 years are firmly rooted in our shared values of democracy, freedom, prosperity, and security. These values continue to inform our bilateral ties and shape the involvement of both of our countries globally. As the world's oldest and largest democracies, both the United States and India are committed to the preservation and promotion of our shared ideals as we pool our strengths toward addressing key issues at the bilateral, regional, and global levels. Our long and successful relationship has grown in strength and depth through the years, and today spans a wide range of sectors covering traditional areas of cooperation like defense and trade, to developing engagements and exploring opportunities like those in new technologies, cybersecurity, energy, climate, agriculture, and space. The traditional and emerging activities are progressing alongside our continued cultivation of our strong cultural and civil society connections, which include a very active Indian diaspora in the United States. As mentioned, I think every person I speak to says they have a family member in the US, and it makes us connect at a very deep level. 75 years of bilateral ties have witnessed many key milestones on our bilateral diplomatic journey. The visit of independent India's first Prime Minister to the United States in 1949 laid the foundation of US-India ties, which have expanded over the following 7 decades. Through the Cold War period and until President Bill Clinton's visit in 2000, bilateral ties remained largely estranged due to the US support for Pakistan during the 1971 war and India's completion of its first nuclear tests in 1974. But it is vital to note that even these difficulties were interspersed with attempts at collaboration by both the United States and India, as observed in the US support to India in the 1962 war with China, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's US visit in 1982 to establish common grounds for cooperation, and the launch of the economic reforms by India in 1991, which have paved the way for expanding economic ties, just to name a few. Of course, there were others that were already mentioned. With the turn of the millennia, concerted efforts at widening and deepening cooperation began with the initiation of measures such as implementing the Energy Security Dialogue, signing the new defense framework, drafting the Civil Nuclear Deal in 2005, expanding trade under the Economic and Financial Partnership, and convening the first strategic dialogue in 2010. The last decade in particular has been nothing short of momentous. Washington and New Delhi have continued to cultivate, deepen, and strengthen bilateral ties. India has shed its historical reluctance to engage globally and is recognized by the world as a capable, willing, and reliable partner. The United States recognizes this and appreciates New Delhi's role in augmenting and solidifying the security and stability of the Indo-Pacific. We continue to engage India to deepen our cooperation on the issues most vital to our people, ending the COVID-19 pandemic, countering the climate crisis, and developing cleaner energy sources, growing the prosperity of our people through trade and education, and upholding a free, open, rules-based order to bolster security, democracy, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. The revival of the quadrilateral dialogue, which was resurrected in 2017 through the leadership of Japan's then Prime Minister Abe Shinzo, was a result of a common US-India vision. Although the narrative of countering China was a key driver in the reformulation of the Quad, the platform is no longer confined to this objective and has demonstrated a more expansive intent by all its member countries, the United States, India, Japan, and Australia, toward developing policy and action-oriented approaches within the framework of functional cooperation in order to achieve tangible goals across sectors such as critical technologies, health, food security, cybersecurity, and climate action. Let me give you a tangible example of how the Quad's humble beginnings as the 2004 Tsunami Core Group and its initial remit as Disaster Management Coordination has been transformed into a grouping that is responsive to the changing demands in the Indo-Pacific region. The example I want to provide is that of the Quad COVID-19 vaccine partnership. While it was already mentioned, I just wanted to give some additional details. From the early days of the pandemic, the Quad leaders sketched out a plan that allowed each member country to collaborate in vaccine deployment to those nations that needed help the most, in ways that played on our Quad's national strengths. India for vaccine production, the United States and Japan for financing, and Australia for delivery. Like all plans, there were adjustments along the way, and each Quad partner contributed how they could to overcome hurdles and challenges. As a result of the Quad efforts, 275 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines were delivered to 30 countries across the Indo-Pacific by May of 2022. The COVID-19 experience built muscle memory for the Quad to undertake other collaborative efforts. So at the May 2022 Quad Leaders Summit, the members reiterated their emphasis on building habits of cooperation among the 4 member nations to advance a strong vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific through practical cooperation on diverse 21st century challenges. At the summit, the leaders discussed possibilities of cooperation in developing maritime domain awareness, enhancing global health security, tackling climate action, strengthening capacities in critical and emerging technologies, cybersecurity and space, expanding infrastructure, and again, working on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Moving beyond geostrategic dynamics and its connections to our political and diplomatic relationship, commerce continues to occupy a prime position in the US-India bilateral ties, with steady growth each year that supports thousands of jobs in both of our countries, even through macro and microeconomic ups and downs. While the United States is among India's largest export destinations, considerable room and potential for growth and investment exists. And I think Ms. Yadav very capably described some of those opportunities here with West Bengal. The COVID-19 pandemic underscored the need for supply chain diversification as an essential part of building supply chain resilience. India, with its human capital, young demographic, and governmental focus on boosting manufacturing, is poised to plug in as a key component in global supply chains. The launch of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, IPEF, in May of 2022 is a part of making that intent a reality. IPEF is a US-led framework that allows participating countries to solidify their relationships and engage in crucial economic and trade activities and discussions that concern the Indo-Pacific region, such as building resilient supply chains. 11 other countries and India have endorsed IPEF, and we are looking together for various constellations of partners to implement each of the 4 broad pillars. So let me explain those pillars briefly. The first pillar connects to connected economies, which entails nations to work towards higher standards and rules for digital trade. Acknowledging that data is the new oil, this pillar is particularly significant for easing the flow and exchange of data across borders. Building resilient supply chains that in turn constitute resilient economies forms the second pillar of IPEF. And this endeavor therefore seeks to protect countries from the effects of potentially disruptive global occurrences, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. This brings me to the third IPEF pillar, which comprises efforts directed at meeting and subsequently exceeding our COP commitments through practical green energy innovations and green infrastructure projects. The fourth and final pillar underscores the importance of fair trade and seeks rules targeting corruption, as well as the formulation of agreements on measures for effective taxation. We are working with India and other IPEF countries and partners to develop the details and to tackle 21st century economic challenges, in particular with respect to pillars 2 and 3 on supply chains and clean energy. We welcome India's participation in the IPEF discussions. IPEF is rooted in the vision of rules-based open markets that will sustain rising prosperity for Indo-Pacific nations. The United States sees great opportunity in the IPEF, but that does not detract from the growth that we can achieve in bilateral trade. As business people, you all would be better versed than I am in the sectors of enhanced opportunities. I have heard from business leaders and state officials about products such as ready-made garments, gems and jewelry, electronics, machinery and chemicals, processed fruits and vegetables, spices and teas, as well as increased services in health and the digital economy. To dive a bit deeper here, bilateral investments in the digital sector are especially promising in the application of artificial intelligence and machine learning in areas like geospatial mapping, agriculture, healthcare, and autonomous mobility. There are non-tariff and technical barriers that require further discussions to accelerate engagement in these areas. Some of this work started in May of 2022, when President Biden and Prime Minister Modi finalized an investment incentive agreement. The agreement provides a framework for expansion of investment in India for private sector-led projects in critical areas such as renewable energy, agriculture, health, and small and medium-sized enterprise financing. In 2022, the United States plans to join 6 of India's technology innovation hubs to support at least 25 joint projects in areas such as artificial intelligence and data science. This cooperation was announced through the US-India Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies. With rapid advances in and infinite applications of new technology, the scope of US-India cooperation is set to multiply rapidly in the years to come. Hence, while defense and security relations will continue to cement our bilateral ties, especially when one views the world through the Indo-Pacific lens, economic growth and enhancement of connectivity linkages will become a larger and ever more important part of the US-India comprehensive global strategic partnership. No speech, however, would be complete if I did not talk about travel between our nations. In the early days of the pandemic, the United States reduced its visa operations throughout India. In India, 25,000 visas expired per month during the pandemic. And now that the desire to travel is back with a vengeance, there are long wait times for visa interviews. The U.S. Department of State is quickly returning to its pre-pandemic operating status and is prioritizing increased staffing in consular sections in India and around the world to meet this growing demand. This summer, a record number of Indian students received a visa to pursue their education in the United States, and we have expanded the visa categories that do not require an interview, including employment-based visas, research scholars, and business travelers who are renewing their visas. Information about U.S. visas can be found at www.travel.state.gov. At a bilateral meeting in April 2022, President Biden observed that our continued consultation and dialogue are key to ensuring that the U.S.-India relationship continues to grow deeper and stronger. Indeed, the United States and India have transformed a once fractious relationship into one that is built on mutual trust and respect, one that is cognizant of geopolitical realities, while also sensitive to the national interests and responsibilities of each individual country. At 75, it might be said that the partnership between the United States and India has the energy and vibrancy of a 25-year-old, the professional curiosity of a 35-year-old, the confidence of a 45-year-old, the financial stability of a 55-year-old, and the wisdom of a 65-year-old. I am excited to see what our democratic nations will be able to achieve in the next 75 years for the betterment of our countries, our peoples, our Indo-Pacific neighborhood, and our world. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Melinda. That was indeed wonderful. Now we would move on to our panel discussion, one which we have all been waiting for. So I would request all our guests on stage, if you all kindly can be seated. Girls, please help them. Thank you so much, and can we please have a round of applause for all our speakers on stage. Thank you so much once again. So now to begin the panel discussions, may I please begin by inviting our session moderator, Dr. Shuman Mukherjee, on stage, please. Dr. Shuman Mukherjee, sir, if you can please come up on stage. Dr. Shuman Mukherjee. Can we please have Dr. Shuman Mukherjee on stage, please? A round of applause from our session moderator, Dr. Shuman Mukherjee, please. Sir, a few words on Dr. Mukherjee. He is an educator for over 50 years with a research experience in both India and abroad. Dr. Mukherjee is a Xaverian, a Stephanian, and an alumnus of Delhi School of Economics, and he is also the fellow of All India Management Association, a member of the Indo-British Scholars Association, environmental fellow of USAIP. He has participated in World Bank Conference in 1994 and was invited as an international observer at Bill Clinton White House Conference on Small Business in Washington in 1995. Presently, Dr. Mukherjee is a Director General of the Bhawanipur Gujarati Education Society, an independent director of Jardine Henderson Limited, East India Pharmaceutical Limited, S. Jayakishan Consulting Limited, Kolkata. He is a member of the State Advisory Board on Education, the Government of West Bengal since 2010, a member of the Advisory Board, Chairman, International Marketing and Business Community, Federation of Small and Medium Industries, West Bengal, a member Economics of Education, MSME Subcommittees, BCCI, ASSOCHAM, and CIIER. He is a life member and General Council member of CENERSK, an independent thinking body of researchers on international development recognized by the Niti Aayog. Thank you so much, Dr. Mukherjee, for agreeing to be our moderator. Now, may we please have our next speaker on stage, Dr. Duvuri Subbarao, the former governor of the Reserve Bank of India from 2008 to 2013. Prior to his stint as the governor of RBI, Dr. Subbarao was a finance secretary to the government of India between 2007 to 8 and secretary to the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council from 2005 to 2007. As a civil servant in India for over 3 decades and a lead economist in the World Bank for 5 years, Mr. Subbarao has acquired vast hands-on experience in public finance management. Mr. Subbarao holds a master's degree in physics from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. He has studied economics at the Ohio State University and later at MIT. He has a PhD in economics from the Andhra University. Mr. Subbarao's book, Who Moved My Interest Rate, chronicling his experience in leading the Reserve Bank of India through 5 turbulent years, is best known for the way he explained the policy dilemmas and challenges facing an emerging economy, central bank in a globalized world. After stepping down from the Reserve Bank of India as the governor, Dr. Subbarao was a distinguished fellow first at the National University of Singapore and most recently at the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Subbarao, thank you so much, sir, for gracing us today. Our next panelist on stage is Mr. D.K. Joshi, Chief Economist, CRISIL Limited. At CRISIL, Dr. Joshi leads the economic research agenda and is the primary spokesperson of CRISIL on macroeconomic issues. He has extensive experience in macroeconomic analysis and medium-term assessments of the Indian economy. He was member of the working group of savings for the 12th five-year plan. He is also a member of the industry monitoring group of Reserve Bank of India, a member of economic policy group of Confederation of Indian Industries, and co-chairman of FICCI Economist Forum. He regularly writes for leading newspapers and expresses his views on the economy in the electronic media. Mr. Joshi has spent over 30 years in economic research and consultancy and over 11 years at the National Council of Applied Economic Research before moving on to the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, New Delhi, and then CRISIL. At NCAER, Mr. Joshi worked on short and medium-term macroeconomic forecasting using computable general equilibrium and econometric models, macroeconomic reforms, and fiscal policy-related issues. At CERC, he worked on regulatory, competition, and tariff-related issues in the Indian power sector. Mr. Joshi holds a bachelor's and master's degree from Honours School in Economics, Punjab University, Chandigarh. He has attended programs on macroeconomic policy and management at the Harvard University and has been a visiting scholar to Economic Research Unit of the University of Pennsylvania. Welcome, Mr. Joshi. Our next speaker is Mr. Debashish Sen. He got his diploma in public administration from ENA, France. Mr. Debashish Sen is presently the managing director of HITCO. He has served as the chief electoral officer for 5 years and is the head of information technology and electronics department for 3 years and head of urban development for 7 years. As CEO, his innovative communication iron, Ananda Babu, made in doing India's first photo-electoral rolls much easier in the state. In IT and E department, he applied use of blockchain in the field of birth certificates for the first time in India. In the UD department, he was instrumental in bringing out the first township policy of the country, and as MD of HITCO, he has been associated and still is in developing a 30 square kilometer greenfield township for more than 14 years now. He has received the Jewel of Bengal Award for outstanding contribution to public administration. Mr. Sen is also the managing director and chairman of HITCO Newtown, Kolkata, Green Smart City Corporation Limited, which are both government companies that is developing Smart City of Newtown, Kolkata. He is the chairman of Nobodiganto Industrial Township Authority at Sector 5. Welcome, Mr. Sen. Our next panelist is Mr. Chandrasekhar Ghosh, MD and CEO, Bandhan Bank. Okay, so I'll give a brief introduction on Mr. Ghosh. He can join us on stage a while. Mr. Ghosh has over 30 years of experience in microfinance and development terrain. He founded Bandhan Bank in 2001 as a not-for-profit enterprise for financial inclusion and women empowerment. Further, he oversaw its transformation into an NBFC MFI and finally a universal bank in August 2015. He is the former president of BCCI, the former chairman of CII Eastern Region, a member of the managing committee of the Indian Banks Association. He was elected as Senior Ashoka Fellow in 2007, and MSc in Statistics. He attended the HBS Acheon program on strategic leadership at Harvard Business School. He has been recognized by esteemed enterprises for his exemplary work. Welcome, Dr. Ghosh. Our next speaker is Mr. Shrutitha Bhattacharya. Sri Shrutitha Bhattacharya is an IAS 1985 batch officer from AP Telangana cadre and has graduated from Presidency College, Kolkata. He is the chairperson of the West Bengal Electricity Regulatory Commission. Before joining the Electricity Regulatory Commission, he served as the principal advisor of infrastructure in the government of West Bengal. Mr. Bhattacharya was the chairman and managing director of Coal India Limited. Before taking charge of Coal India, he was the CMD of state-owned the Singareni Collieries Company Limited. In his career, Mr. Bhattacharya has served as Commissioner of Industries and the Secretary in charge of Irrigation Department, among other posts. As CNMD of the Andhra government's transmission company called Aptransco, he was chairman of the Andhra Pradesh Power Coordination Committee. As Principal Secretary Energy, he was de facto CNMD of Apgenco. As Principal Secretary Infrastructure and Investment at Andhra Pradesh, he successfully executed port, airport, natural gas, and many public-private partnership projects. He also functioned as CNMD of AP Renewable Energy and AP Gas Corporation. In recognition of his contributions, Sri Bhattacharya has received many awards, including the Best CEO PSU Award for the Public Sector Enterprises by Forbes. Under his leadership, CIL has achieved India Today Award of Fastest Growing PSC and also achieved Excellence in the Coal Sector Award. Welcome, Mr. Bhattacharya. Our next speaker is Mr. Sanjeev Paul, the Vice President, Safety and Health Sustainability at Tata Steel Limited. Mr. Paul graduated in metallurgical engineering and joined Tata Steel in 1986 as a graduate trainee. He started his career at steel melting shops, where working in various capacities till 1998. After completion of a senior management program at CEDP France, he moved on to assume leadership roles in areas of general management in TSL. He assumed the position of GM Town Services in January 2003, and under his leadership, the Town Services division became an independent company by the name of JUSCO, now Tata Steel Utilities and Infrastructure Services Limited, which he headed as managing director till March 2010. He was the VP Corporate Services of Tata Steel Limited from April 2010 till March 2013, after which he joined Tata Metallics Limited as Managing Director. From July 2017, he has assumed the role of VP Safety, Health and Sustainability at Tata Steel. Apart from being the chairman of Confederation of Indian Industry Eastern Region and an active member of World Steel Association, he provides guidance as chairman member of the board to various organizations such as Tata Metallics, Tata Pigments, Responsible Steel. He is an avid reader and a pro golfer. Welcome, Mr. Paul. Our last and definitely not the least speaker, Mr. Nirupam Chaudhary, the Regional Director, Eastern Region of NASSCOM. Mr. Nirupam Chaudhary heads the Eastern Region of NASSCOM in Kolkata. He has more than 2 decades of experience in information technology and related research and market intelligence. He has extensively worked on new project ideas, business planning, management development, and major implementations. He is personally enthusiastic about spreading the potential of Eastern India as an IT destination in the country and helping emerging companies to grow in the region. Mr. Chaudhary frequently participates and speaks in industry events in the Asia-Pacific region. He is a B.Tech Electronics and Instrumentation from Jadavpur University, Kolkata, and a PGDBA in Information Systems. So I welcome you, Mr. Chaudhary, and I thank you all esteemed speakers, and I request Dr. Mukherjee, the show is all yours now, please take it on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for coming, enjoy the discussions.
Good afternoon to all of you. I must say that we're running far behind time. So although I was asked to deliver the theme address, I'll try to clip it down at my personal end, just touching the bare points that would perhaps stir up the discussion today. But I would request the panelists too, because I know Dr. Subba Rao has to leave by 2:30. So we will limit our speeches to 10 minutes, and there are 7 of us, and that's the color of the vibjor. And if I throw 3 pebbles into the kaleidoscope, the pebbles being purpose, why are we doing this here? What is the potential? And what is the possibility? And while you look into the kaleidoscope, you'll get the rainbows. And the 7 colors of the rainbows is just in present of you, the 7 speakers today. So you will get various variants of it, from economics to the digital world to environment, all the works, infrastructure, which is the cornerstone of India's policy. I think as far as I'm concerned, I'll just introduce you to begin the discussion with what Michelle Obama said. The fact is, with everything, every friendship you make and every bond you trust to establish, you are shaping the image of America projected to the rest of the world. In a similar echo, in India, we say we celebrate the commonality of differences, that we are a land and belonging rather than of blood. In the words of Rabindranath, whatever be the sect you come from, Arjos, Anarjos, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jains, Buddhists, or whatever caste you belong to, in this huge mass of humanity, come to the Indian shore or are welcome. So we believe, and the discussion today is primarily between the Statue of Unity, India, and Statue of Liberty in America. So that's the meeting ground of the two democracies. What's the big difference? The greatness of America, as Alexei Tocqueville says, lies not in being enlightened. Enlightenment is not America's forte, rather than any other nation, but rather in her ability to repair her faults. For students of management, you'd know the Kaizen, one step at a time, improve qualitatively, every step at a time, and your value will totally change. Something which we need to learn very strongly from the Americans. The American dream, the dream is not to have reservations and the weak and the lame carried with you. Of course, they will be given soup lines, but the dream is it's a land of plenty in which the life should be better, richer, and taller, and with the opportunity of each according to ability or achievement. So they stress on ability, on achievement. Once upon a time, this was also the creed in India, because as Albert Einstein said, we owe a lot to Indians who taught us how to count, without which it wouldn't be worthwhile for scientific discovery to take place. Or for that matter, if you look at Mark Twain, and he very, very aptly puts, this is one land that all men desire to see, and having seen it once, by even a glimpse, would not give the glimpse for all the shows of the rest of the world. Just a glimpse of India, and your entire destiny is likely to change, because for once you get to see a culture which is rich and which is enriched. As Swami Ranganathanandan once said, India has a very strong Rishi Vangsha, but we've had a very poor Rajvangsha. Therefore, politically, India has been periodically attacked. We have not been known to be aggressive and belligerent in our ways of conquering. We conquer the mind rather than empires. But the Rishi Vangsha, the mind of the Indian, is highly treasured. And the basic link between America and India today, our scholars are the most sought after professors in US. Our doctors span all over the world. And this is, I think, a forte that India should really get back to. And we need to learn from the Americans. If we are doing so much in Harvard and Wharton and what have you, why can't we set up our business schools and our educational setup just the way it used to be years ago in Nalanda? And education is one forte where I think we can make a lot of difference in education, and on science, and in research. And not to forget, if you remember Mark Twain's glimpses of India, tourism. We need to learn, if Thailand can be Thailand, why can't India sell what it has to in that world? But this is the mundane, it's well known. What is not known, and I'd like to look into that, because, you know, as theoretical economists, we always talk about the revealed preference, the zone of ignorance, which is seldom treaded upon. There are new dimensions that are coming in. You know, as I talk about 75 years of relationship, there are three things which puzzle me. One is, in 1913, the rupee-dollar exchange rate was $13 to a rupee. 75 years ago, it was $1 to 1 rupee. Today, in 75 years, it's 75 rupees to a dollar, 80. So we've crossed that 75 years. Every year of our existence has actually led to the deterioration in the value of the rupee. Now, we could have certainly done better. Has this come in good stead? Is our goods being sold at a lower rate? Or have we saturated the markets such that we are really having a positive stance on that? I think we need to look at it very squarely, and I think with Professor Subba Rao and the other economists with us, we will look into it very closely. What is it that's going wrong with India? Why is the dollar appreciating with the rupee year after year, and we seem to be floundering on that, so much so that our CAD, the current account deficit, is ever widening. No matter how much our exports increase, our imports are always increasing more. I'm not going to the economics of what we could be doing, but it would fare well for me to say that although we are the largest democracy and we seem to be sharing so much in common with the US, one of my trips to US when I was teaching in one of the colleges, I asked my friends there, I don't see why India does not make so much sense to you when we speak the same language, English, when we are democratic, where we believe in liberal thinking, and yet I find China being revealed preferred. Why is your relationship with China ever increasing? And if I were to give you the statistics of 2010 to 2021, US companies reshoring jobs, giving jobs, 44% of that goes to China, 21% Mexico, 10% Canada, 5% Japan and India, Singapore 3%, Honduras clearly below us 1%, Germany 2%. So clearly we could do much better in doing business with America on the services side. I went as an environmental fellow. As was announced there, I participated in the World Bank conference, and I had the delightful experience of being invited by Clinton to his conference on small businesses. And one of the things I had gone to propagate, and my study was green marketing strategies, was how do we handle waste? How do we have biodegradable things? And Maryland Chamber of Commerce said, why can't we go in for subcontracting deals with India? And I thought that was a wonderful exercise, and I built up a paper called Global Ancillarization. Instead of trying to sell a shirt which finds its place in front of Smithsonian Institute, and our ties are being sold for a dime a dozen in front of that museum, why don't we, like Bangladesh, learn how to stitch properly, how to do our textiles properly, and learn to earn $1, which is 80 rupees today, instead of trying to make a shirt for 160 rupees. So if you process a certain product into small parts, there's a lot that can happen if we learn to be globally ancillarized. And it will also promote peace. If Bangladesh is doing one part of the journey, you're doing one, the finishing is done by Pakistan, you're actually promoting the Commonwealth, and that's the way the world should move. It's one family. So I think there's huge opportunity if we start doing one step at a time, building up processes rather than products. On every element, there's a possibility there. But as I said, the zones of ignorance, what are the areas that we have not looked into at all? And those are the areas that I think we should be looking at. I could go into many points, but I'll just sum it up by saying, we should be looking at the blue economy. There's 7,500 kilometers of coastal area. And if you look at the aggression, the belligerence that China is showing, we need to arm ourselves. We've had the Quad 4 with India being done, and I'm privy to some of it because I'm with one of the think tanks, Senators K. And we know there's a lot of activity going on in the Indian Ocean, and we do need America to help us there. But while we are on that, the AUKUS is one where Australia, UK, USA get together, and the largest submarine deal has gone to Australia. It could actually have come to India because we are quite up to date in producing submarines and quite up to date with taking care of the ocean. So there are areas where we can go in for great dialogue with the US in terms of defense and the geopolitical scene, particularly after Afghanistan and the Ukraine conflict. It's time we started getting our act together so that the world looks forward to peace and not for belligerence. And I'm sure our government is playing on the front foot there. There's the orange economy, which is about the creative economy, and it's time we looked into that aspect also. How do we sell our creativity? UNESCO has given us this accolade of Durga Puja being a global festival. What are we doing about it? It's just not attracting people to Calcutta, but our culture, whether it's Holi or Diwali or Rakhi, these are bonds of friendship. We can take it to places. The silver economy, how do they treat the elderly people? How are we treating the pensioners? What do we do to them after the whole years of their existence? So when I look at the blue economy and the red economy, which is Fordism, you producing large scale, creating waste on large scale, there are avenues we need to look into. The gray economy, how do we convert? And for once, due to the recent problems we've faced in this part of the city, we've realized why demonetization was important. Handling cash leads to corruption, and we've realized it in no better way than now. Why cash had to be removed. So how do you get into a digitalized world? There's a lot we need to learn about how America does its deals. However, there's a problem there, the cryptocurrency. Whose currency is it in any case? And how do we control that? And that's an issue we need to indulge in. And I'm sure one of the speakers will take that part up. So we have the gray economy, the white economy, which is the digital economy, the black economy, which is well known in India, and the pink economy, the orange economy, the silver economy. And if I go through the colors, there are so many things which are opportunities for us to do business with Americans. And this is where we learn technology. This is where we learn how to do things properly. And we could be sharing our resources, knowledge, and other things. I'm not taking up the issues of the economic outlook, but I will say this. In my visit to US, I found that they have a product called Products for a Healthy Planet. And 350 products were created out of waste. The best paper, tissue paper, comes from used currency. The largest shoe factory comes from used rubber. They do not use chlorine to get your clothes white anymore. They have something called fox fiber. If we buy those technologies, we will realize there's nothing called waste. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. How do you use waste as a resource? That's the first lesson we need to learn. So we are already using that on laying roads through plastics and plastic bags. But there are much more things to do on fishing and aquamarine. And this SDG actually goes into many aspects like fisheries. I'll just account for them: national accounting, coastal marines, aquaculture, fish processing, manufacturing, trade, technology, logistics. The prime mover, people will be questioning, and I'm sure Dr. Subbarao will take it up. How real is this idea of economy being 5 trillion in just about 5 years from now? Normally, as a die-hard economist, I would say it's impossible because the savings rate divided by the capital output ratio, the savings rate is continuously falling. If it's 30% or below and your capital output ratio is 4:1, you can never go beyond 5%. So this will be a distant dream. You cannot touch the 5 trillion without a massive investment. But where's the investment taking place? It's taking place 5 lakh crores plus on infrastructure. Or when you talk about infrastructure, you're talking about huge possibilities. And the national highways, the greenways, the green paths, the transport, the communications. If America is America today, it's because because of war alignment, the turnpikes linking up the entire economy. Fortunately, this government has thought about infrastructure in a big way. And therefore, this will be the prime mover. And the theory of savings rate divided by capital output ratio giving growth, that's last year. This present year is if you can increase your capex, if you can increase your infrastructure, you'll be just on the forefront of making good growth and having good business. Now, there is a problem, however. This is called, in economic terms, SOCs instead of DPAs, social overhead capital. They have long gestation lags. And if you have not learned how to do the implementation well, we will have a situation like the metro in Calcutta, which was supposed to be done in 5-10 years, which still happens in Delhi and Baroda and Nagpur. It takes almost a few generations to see the metro happening here. But do you realize the cost overrun? If that's not happening, then inflation is bound to happen, as it is indeed. And there comes the question, in a poor economy where the division, inclusive growth is our call, where the division between the rich and the poor is ever widening, inflation is the highest form of taxation. How do you control this inflation? Surely just doing away, raising the reverse repo is not going to be the way out. There should be other measures, and I'm sure, being the former governor of Reserve Bank, we'll look at why the government is fighting shy to bring in the other monetary measures to control inflation. It's another matter in a non-monetized economy where large sections are in the informal sector. You just control it with monetary policy. But what about fiscal policy? How about raising the revenue there? And I think on those fronts, I'll be looking forward to, and I'll come back with answer questions. And let me tell you, there is a session for question, answer, Q&A, and you're going to ask those questions of these people. But, you know, I exist because I think, and I want you to think. Put your thinking cap on, because you're going to have a battery of batsmen today. Sachin Tendulkars and Kohlis coming in to hit ideas for a six, and let's have them on board. I'll start with Dr. Subbarao. Thank you so much.
Thank you. First of all, my best wishes to all of you on the occasion of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. As we celebrate 75 years of our independence, I want you to think of a 10-year-old girl today and contrast her life with that of a grandmother born around the time of independence. The 10-year-old girl today wears a uniform, goes to school. Her grandmother was condemned to lifelong drudgery, spent her whole day fetching water, never thought of a school. This 10-year-old girl today went through an ICDS program as a child. She has a midday meal. Her grandmother was all her life malnourished, weak, and burdened with disease. This 10-year-old girl today probably has a 50% chance of having access to a toilet. Her grandmother had to wait for the entire day to go to a toilet till darkness came. The 10-year-old girl today has the entire world on her phone. Her grandmother never even had access to a radio. This 10-year-old girl today can wait, probably will not be married until 20. Her grandmother got married at 15, had 4 children by the time she was 22, was not sure how many children will survive. That is the distance we've traveled in 75 years. In 75 years, India has advanced. We used to be a food deficit country. Today we have a food surplus. We are the largest producer of milk in the world. We're the second largest producer of rice and wheat. We have a space program. We have IITs and IIMs. We have cricket. We have Bollywood. I'm told there is a grandmother's group in Hong Kong just for watching Bollywood movies. President Biden, on the occasion of 75 years of India-US diplomatic relations, said that the vibrant Indian-American community in the United States has made us a more innovative, inclusive, and stronger nation. Likewise, I believe India has benefited from 75 years of cooperation with the United States. As Mr. Cole said, our relations on the political and strategic front might have had seesaw, but on the economic front, they were on an even keel. As I said, 75 years ago, we were a food deficit country. Today, we're a food surplus country, largely owing to the American support in the early decades of our independence. The PL 460 program, which protected us from famine and hunger. In subsequent decades, there was a large American program to support Indian agriculture in the 1950s and the 1960s. 2,500 agronomists and agriculture scientists, Indian scientists, were trained in US universities. American agronomists came to India. The Pantnagar Agriculture University and the Punjab Agriculture University, which are among the foremost agriculture universities in the world today, were set up with American support. The Green Revolution, which made us food surplus, became a reality because of American support. In subsequent decades, when Pandit Nehru and his team thought of the IITs, the IIT Kanpur was set up with American support, with support from 9 top American universities, including MIT, Stanford, Caltech, Princeton. IIT Kanpur was the first institution in the country to start computer education program. I know because I'm a product of IIT Kanpur in that period. So if today Indian software engineers are part of the American Silicon Valley story, it is because of that beginning we made. If today American entrepreneurs and American capital are part of the digital revolution in our country, it is because of those early beginnings. But what I want to spend the next 7 minutes is looking forward to what we can do, Indo-US support, India by ourselves. When Prime Minister Modi returned to office in 2019 for a second term, he set a target that we should become a 5 trillion economy by 2024-25. We know that's impossible. It looked impossible then. It's certainly impossible today. We will, of course, get to 5 trillion. Economists say that we'll get there by 28, 29, possibly a year later, perhaps a year earlier. How quickly we get to a 5 trillion economy is important. What is even more important is how we get there. We can get to a 5 trillion economy by just the top 10% becoming richer and the bottom 50% or 60% getting left behind. That sort of a growth will not be sustainable. The only way we can reach 5 trillion and maintain that growth beyond 5 trillion is by ensuring that the bottom 600 million people are part of that growth process, that they contribute to that growth process, they benefit from that growth process. For a long time, we were apprehensive about our growth. Remember, we used to talk about the Hindu rate of growth. We were fatalistic that a large economy like India cannot grow fast. When the East Asian miracle happened, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, produced at home, exported to the world, produced spectacular growth, we were dismissive of that effort. We said, oh, those small economies can do. A continental economy like India cannot grow fast. But when China emerged on the scene and showed that a large continental-sized economy can in fact clock double-digit growth on a trot for 3 decades, India was shaken up. India was inspired. We said, we too can do that. So as I said, for rapid growth, we need to take everybody along the bottom 600 million people as well. There are many things we need to do to get to a 5 trillion economy. People ask me, give us a one-word answer. One-word answer for India to get to a 5 trillion economy. If I'm forced into a one-word answer, I would say that we need more investment. Investment in production, in manufacturing, in services. Because today's investment is tomorrow's production capacity. India is very unique in the world in the sense that we have 600 million people, low income. You increase their incomes, they will spend it. And that spending will result in more consumption, more production, more jobs, and we can get onto a virtuous cycle. 3 years ago, I was speaking at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and somebody said, you know, your government cut corporate tax. All of you are aware of that, 2019. President Trump cut taxes in the US. Nothing happened here. Why do you think that tax cut will help India? The simple reason why tax cuts won't work in America and tax cuts will work in India is because we are a supply-constrained economy. In America, even if they cut taxes, people may not invest. In India, if you cut taxes, there will be investment. I used to work on industrial promotion in my home state of Andhra Pradesh, in government of India. And you know, all the international investors come and they say, oh, we want to invest $5 billion here in India. So what can you do for us? So we tell them, you know, what we can do, tax concessions, water, land, utilities, free, whatever. And then they say, for good measure, oh, we went to China last week, just returned from Shanghai on our way back. So we said, what did the Chinese offer you? They said, the Chinese offered us this. Oh, how long did the Chinese say they will take? Oh, Chinese said they'll take 6 months. And we say, oh, we will deliver that in 3 months. And the Chinese, having promised that they will deliver something in 6 months, will actually deliver in 3 months. The Indians, having promised that we will deliver in 3 months, we will not deliver even in 3 years. So we need to get more investment, means we need to reduce the transaction cost for our investors. The second thing we need to do is improve the productivity of that investment. I told you that a one-word answer is investment. Our former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, used to say that all one-word answers about India are wrong. So we need to increase investment, we need to increase the productivity of that investment, which means improve governance. Third, we need to improve education and health outcomes. We've made remarkable progress in education, in health. The midday meal program that we have in India is possibly the best development program anywhere, anytime in the world, guaranteed. There's a lot of debate today on freebies. Please do not confuse the midday meal with a freebie. It is possibly one of the best things we could have done. The ICDS program, Child Nutrition Program, is another remarkable Indian innovation because nutritional deficiencies contracted in the first 1,000 days of a child's birth can never be reversed. In education and in health, we've achieved remarkable progress. Education requires enrollment. We've solved that because 99% of the children, both boys and girls today, are enrolled. We need to retain need to retain children, especially girls. In the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s, we built toilets so that girls would continue to attend schools. We had to solve the problem of retention, achievement. Our children, achievement standards are poor, we need to improve that. America and India, after the pandemic, started the Samriddh program. It's housed in IIT Delhi, which is to help NGOs, institutions in India reach top-class medical help to distant parts of the country. That's another way India and America have collaborated in health. The third thing we need to do is create jobs. I can speak for about 2 hours on what we should do to create jobs, but I don't even have 2 minutes. So I want to say just this, that the single biggest problem of our economy today is jobs. We add 12 million people to the labor force every year. We're not even able to produce half as many jobs. If agriculture productivity goes up as we want it to, agriculture will actually throw out 100 million people who are to be found jobs. And those people are unskilled. So the biggest challenge for the economy today, if we want to get to 5 trillion soon enough, is to create jobs. Jobs are not going to come from agriculture. As I said, agriculture is going to throw out labor. Jobs are not going to come from the services sector. When you travel outside the country, they say, oh, India, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune. But the services sector jobs are only 0.05%. The largest employment in the last 5 years has been in security guards. Just imagine, those are low productivity jobs. So we need to create jobs. Next on my list is maintaining macroeconomic stability. Price stability, financial stability, exchange rate stability. Dr. Mukherjee has posed a lot of questions. I don't have time to answer them. DK will answer them. He's an economist of repute. But I want to say that if you want to get to a 5 trillion economy and go beyond that, it's very important that we have financial stability, price stability, macroeconomic stability, simply because investors need a predictable environment. They will not be able to invest unless they know what's going to happen in the economy. Even for us at a personal level, if you want to buy an apartment, if the apartment price today is 50 lakhs, 45 lakhs next month, and 60 lakhs in December, you will not be able to make a decision. So you need macroeconomic stability. The seventh on my list for getting to a 5 trillion economy is that we need to address some of the big mega trends in the global economy, in the global polity, geopolitical tensions, deglobalization or disglobalization that's happening, diverse demographic transitions across the world. If you look at Japan, population is declining. Some of the East Asian countries, population is declining. In Europe, population is stabilizing. America, population growth rate is coming down. India has reached fertility rate. Africa, population is still going up. So how do we address these different demographic transitions that are going to change global economy? We talk about a demographic dividend, but demographic dividend will come only if we are able to create jobs. But we need to manage these diverse demographic trends across the country. Technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, which are changing comparative advantage. Now we used to talk about offshoring in the 90s, in the 2000s. Now we're talking about reshoring, jobs going back. So how do we address that challenge? climate change, which Mr. Kaul talked about. So all these global trends, we need to address. That's the 7th on my list. The 8th on my list, possibly the most important according to me, is to improve governance. You know, we talk about structural reforms, we seldom talk about governance reforms. I don't believe we can get to a 5 trillion economy and sustain that growth rate just by structural reforms. We need to have governance reforms across the country. Why are some countries rich and some countries poor? This is a question that economists have struggled with for centuries, for decades, and they're going to struggle with. There is no single answer. Why are countries divided by poverty and plenty, by prosperity and penury, by food and famine, health and sickness? There are several answers. Some people say it's geography. Hot countries cannot grow. You know, you are lethargic, lazy, productivity is low, your soil is very shallow. If you go to Minnesota in America, soil is 6 feet deep, our soil is not even 6 inches deep. So geography explains the difference between rich and poor countries. Some people say culture, that there is no work ethic, no curiosity, no innovation. On the contrary, there's Protestant work ethic in Europe, in America, there's values of innovation. People say resources. You need resources to grow. But Japan has destroyed that story. After the Meiji Revolution, Japan has clocked spectacular growth. No resources at all. Another answer is ignorance. We don't know what's the right thing to do. I don't believe that explains anything, because today we know what is the right thing to do. Our problem is we are unable to do the right things. So to believe that we don't know what's the right thing to do is to go on the wrong track. And this is the final thing I want to say. Many of you might have read Francis Fukuyama. He wrote many books. One of them is Origins of Political Order. He says successful societies across time, across space, are characterized by 3 attributes: rule of law, a strong state. A strong state is not authoritarian state. A strong state is different from an authoritarian state. For example, if you're driving on the wrong side, in Hyderabad, I know where I live, probably in Calcutta too, the probability of getting caught is 0. In a strong state, the probability of getting caught should be 99%. So that is a strong state. So first is rule of law. Second is a strong state. Third is a democratic accountability. Think about it. Rule of law, strong state, democratic accountability. Ever since I've read that book, I've been struggling with myself. I say, is that list complete? What is it that we can add to? Those are necessary conditions, but are they sufficient conditions? Today I can add at least one more to that. And I want you to think about it. The one attribute that I will add is that we need harmony in the country. We cannot grow to 5 trillion or get beyond that unless we have harmony in every sense in the country. So my list to add to Fukuyama would be rule of law, strong state, democratic accountability, and whatever you think of the answer for yourselves. So thank you very much.
Yes,
I think it was very insightful people. And before I ask Dr. Joshi to get into speaking on the Indian economy, the question that Dr. Rao raised is a question that I'd like to bear with you further. From the point of view of jobs should be generated. You know, in the 6th plan, Professor Rajkrishna mentions, a tail cannot wag a dog. It's a dog that wags a tail.
So the model of trying to industrialize and look at industry to generate jobs is in the wrong place. Somehow, people continue to stay in agriculture, and 60% or more than that even now is in agriculture. So we should believe in integrated rural development and dovetail industry to all those industrial aggregates. Namely, he was talking about processing industries, manufacturing industries, hotel, hospitals, everything needs to be now located through satellite towns into this, and that will be the right way to develop, not to touch on infrastructure, which I think is what I'm going to ask Mr. Devashish Sen to say. But my question more pertinently is, we talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliance. Where do you get self-sufficiency? Where do you earn your foreign exchange if we are only thinking about employment? And we are getting foreign exchange, but we are not able to deploy it because it seems like fair weather friends, and we are using it to support the rupee whenever it sinks below a certain level. How do we use our foreign exchange? How do we generate foreign exchange? And what do you think about self-sufficiency if you are only thinking about self-reliance? What do you do about sectoral articulation? And most important, what do we do about inclusive growth, where the spirit is getting so glaring and disgusting? D.K. Doshi from Crescel, India.
Yeah, thank you very much for posing those very challenging questions. I don't think I can answer those in the time that I have, but I'll try to, first of all, thank you very much, Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, for having me here. And Dr. Subbarao is a very hard act to follow. I think he's given a very good recipe for running a growth marathon. I think you can run growth sprints, but I think for a marathon, you need several things, tick boxes. I think you have to tick several boxes, and I think he's laid them out very well. I think before I begin my talk on the economy and try to address maybe some questions, I just wanted to make a point that, well, last year India became US's largest trading, largest trading partner. US is India's largest trading partner, so that was one achievement. Before that, it was China. The other thing is, I think, to be kept in mind when we talk of trade is, India runs a surplus with US. India, otherwise, the trade deficit is massive, almost $200 billion a year. And I think if we run a trade surplus, so our conditions are trade conditions are very favorable, with US, I would say, broadly. And apart from being democracies, I think one other thing that we need to keep in mind is that we are at differing stages of development. So aspirations, expectations are sometimes different. So negotiating trade pacts, etc., obviously will take more time. But I think despite all that, coming back to the first point, I think we have become the largest trading partner of US, and that's something is going to stay that way in the emerging geopolitics. Now coming to, now I would like to talk more about the current scenario as to what's happening globally, how it's playing out for us, and and we'll try to address some of the questions that you raised. Well, we've seen a series of very complex shocks, one after the other, starting from global financial crisis, when the monetary policies across the world became super easy, quantitative easing, various, I think, new dimensions were brought into control to raise the asset prices, to revive the economy. Now, so that was a slow process, and they were trying to get back to normalcy sometimes in 2013, when there was a announcement by the Fed governor at that point that we might normalize the policy, which essentially means moving from super easy, low interest rates to maybe a little higher. That was enough to rattle the emerging markets, and that was the taper tantrum. So it was extremely difficult to come out of the easy policy. And then now when, before we could begin doing that, I think you got the Russia-Ukraine, you got the COVID crisis, which was probably a very deep but a short-lived recession. I think the global financial crisis took a much longer time to come back to, for the economies to come back to normal. Now, after COVID, we were pretty hopeful in this year, in 2021, and also in this year, that maybe now things are going to get back to normal. But you got the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which is another global shock of a completely different dimension, and it has spillover effects which could last for several years. I mean, so typically geopolitical shocks don't last that long. I mean, whether you take Iraq war or whichever you want to highlight, they dissipate very quickly and the economies rebound. But this time, I think it's going to be a little different from the past. So that also needs to be kept in mind. So, and then now, I think also there are issues of China, Taiwan, which are injecting another uncertainty into the whole scenario. And uncertainty is the enemy of investment. It is the enemy of decision making. So in this environment, where do we stand? I mean, so from a global big picture perspective, what we are seeing is growth is coming down, inflation is staying high, which is not a very good thing. I mean, India is very closely connected with the global economy for its exports. I think they are extremely sensitive to what happens to global growth. So that is not a very good global picture for us, apart from various kind of uncertainties. So how the developments in the last 2-3 years, particularly from the Russia-Ukraine war period, how have they filtered out down to us? So first, I think, is inflation, I think, which is a global problem. But if you look at the development of inflation in India, I won't say it is home-baked. I think if you look at the wholesale prices, which we look pretty closely, apart from the consumer prices, what you find is 60% of the increase in inflation in the wholesale prices is from global factors. So clearly, that is one global shock that has spilled over to us. We all know that high inflation destroys the purchasing power. It squeezes the margins of the companies. So that is the second channel through which this is playing out. And then when inflation is high, the central banks have to get into action. So there is a growth sacrifice, because without reducing growth, you can't reduce inflation. So I think that is one channel through which the global scenario is impacting us. And as I said, slowing global growth will hit our exports. It's already hitting our exports, if you see. The trade deficit is beginning to widen now. Another way which it has impacted India is when the budget was being made for 22-23 in February, the strategy was that we will cut down on revenue spending. We will normalize the extra spending that we had to do for subsidies, etc., and move that money towards infrastructure creation, capital investment. But even before the fiscal year could start, I think it was very clear that this strategy is not going to work, because the government had already announced fertilizer subsidy would be double of what was budgeted. Food subsidy had to increase. So now I think that reduced the fiscal flexibility for the government. So that is also a spillover effect, because we still import a lot of fertilizers, and government has to subsidize the fertilizer to a great extent. Then I think, coming to the exchange rate problem, I think the people often think that having a strong currency is a good thing. I mean, it's not something muscular. I mean, currency has to be as per the fundamentals. If you are running high inflation than the rest of the world, your currency has to weaken, otherwise you lose competitiveness in exports. So I think it's from that angle you need to look at. But if I were to see what's happening because of the global factors, the movement in currency or any impact of global developments on the financial sector is a function of two things. Specifically, if I were to talk of currency, how vulnerable you are and what is the magnitude of the shock. So for instance, in 2013, India was a part of the fragile five, very vulnerable. So at that juncture, even the mere announcement from the Fed that we are going to reverse the monetary policy just rattled the currency. Rupee depreciated very, very fast. This time around, I think we have foreign exchange reserves. Sir, I think I would say that Forex reserve is like insurance. I mean, so it's not to be it's to be used when you have a problem. If we did not have forex reserve, rupee would have gone for a spin right now. That's my sense. So we have, our vulnerability is also a little lower than what it was during that period, because our external debt is much lower compared to our internal debt. And current account deficit was also under control, 1.2% of GDP last year. So this is very different from 2013 scenario. So you had less vulnerability, but the shock this time is much, much bigger, compared to 2013. At that time, it was an announcement. This time, you have a massive, the interest rates are being raised at a very fast rate. Inflation in advanced countries is higher than inflation in India, which doesn't usually happen. So you have a very different type of shock that's going to hit you. Now, in this scenario, rupee will remain under pressure, I think, for the simple reason that our vulnerability is also rising. Because global economy is slowing, our exports will slow, but our imports will not slow, because imports are very sticky. I think you cannot do without petroleum product imports. You have to import components from China. I think that's a given. So imports will remain strong, exports will go down. As a result, your current account deficit, which was 1.2% of GDP, can cross 3% of GDP this year. So your vulnerability is high. If there are shocks coming from the global economy, rupee will remain quite volatile, I would say. So I think these are some of the channels, and I think very quickly on what's happening on the growth front, and then I'll come to one or two other issues. So our expectation at CRISIL is we will see GDP growth of 7.3%. Well, that makes India one of, it's said that we are the fastest growing economy, etc. But despite 7.3% growth, we have a permanent loss of GDP. I think let me just take 20 seconds to explain that. If there were no COVID crisis, our GDP would have been 10% higher than what it would be right now. So that's the loss, that's the hit to us. So on your journey to 5 trillion, you've already lost 1 to 1.5 years, because of this hit. But I think why this year's outlook looks so good is because this is, in the last 3 years, this is the first year which began without any functional disruption from COVID. So in 20, we had the COVID starting. In 21, we got the Delta variant, which wrapped the healthcare more than the economy, but it did wrap the economy as well. Now, this was the first time we did not have functional disruption from COVID, and as a result, the contact-based services, the hospitality industry, the airlines, several of them, which were, I think in 2000, if I remember correctly, in 21-22, the size of contact-based services was 11% below its level in 1920. So we were actually, this segment was suffering. So now this segment is bouncing back at a very fast clip, because I think no disruption from COVID means the services contact-based. So this year's growth is very largely supported by contact-based services. Since these services reside in urban areas mostly, so it's benefiting the urban economy more than the rural economy. So that's one support that we have. The second is, I think, when we talk of monsoons, I think at an overall level, it's still important for India because 15% of GDP comes from agriculture. Also because, as was saying, I think a large part of population still resides in agriculture. So that's why monsoons are so critical. So at an overall level, we have a pretty good scenario, 8 or 9% above normal as of yesterday. But when you drill down, when you look through the regions starting from Uttar Pradesh to West Bengal, I think there is an acute deficiency. This part of the country grows about 30% of the rice, and so the rice sowing is about 8 to 9% below its last year's level. So the rice inflation has started rising. Wheat inflation was already hit because of the heat wave. Wheat production was hit, so wheat inflation is also rising. These are the two very important components of government's food distribution program. if inflation in food and in rice and wheat increase, I think that's not a very good scenario that is playing out. So agriculture overall might look good, I think, because the rest of the country has got reasonably good rain. But in parts, I think there are distortions that are appearing. Now, I think let me switch gears towards a little longer term. I don't have much to add to what Dr. Subbarao said. I think I completely agree with him. When we look at long to medium term projections, we look at three factors: labor, capital, and efficiency. So these are the three factors which determine how fast you will grow. Now, I think as far as capital is concerned, the good thing is government is focused on infrastructure. It's because infrastructure has higher spillover effects for rest of the economy. That is good news. But the private capex is yet to fully get activated. What we are seeing there is corporates are sitting on cash, but because of the uncertain environment, as I think was being pointed out, you need certainty for pushing investments up. They are sitting on cash. They have the ability to invest. Their financial profile is much better of the larger corporates. Their credit ratings look good, but I think to push them into investing, I think you require more than just the better financial profile. So what we are seeing right now is the sectors that are connected to infrastructure, where government is pushing, like steel, cement, they are much better, and larger players are already investing in those segments. But I think the investments in other parts of the economy from the private sector, I think, are still holding back. So that's the capital part. Labor, I am a little worried about. I think education plays a very important role, and we should not forget that COVID-19 has also hit our education sector, I think, which will not be very easy to, I think we're still learning about what its scars on the education system will be. But I think that you cannot ignore. I mean, so having good quality labor at a mass scale is very critical. And for a country which has 930 million people in the age bracket of 15 to 64, and another 100 million are, despite stability in birth rates, we are going to add 100 million to the workforce in the next 10 years. And to put it in global context, it is 22% of the increment in global workforce. So that's massive, I mean. So despite birth rates falling, you still have, I think, that's as per the latest projection. So you'll need to generate employment. I mean, there is absolutely no doubt about it. But I think, so apart from that, some good aspects for the medium term, I would say, I think, is one is the efficiency, which will come from better infrastructure, so it will spill over. Some efficiency will come from some of the reforms that were done in the past, like GST, et cetera, which are now paying off. I mean, we're seeing good collections. Even the bankruptcy code process is a healthy development. It's taking time, but it's going to make improve credit culture in India over a medium term. So I think that's going to help us, I would say. The infrastructure, the problem is how do you get the manufacturing investment where to support the economy on a continuing basis. There, I think what government has done is they have introduced a scheme called PLI. I think many of you would be familiar with it. That is to help exports, to produce for domestic consumption, and also to import substitute, I mean, which I think was being referred to as Atmanirbhar. Now, what that is going to do is it's going to create an environment which is conducive for private sector to front load their investment. So because there is a production incentive in the scheme, so if you want to get that incentive, you will have to invest very quickly because it's a time-bound scheme. So we believe that about 13 to 15% of manufacturing investment increment is going to come from the PLI scheme, which will be about $35 billion US over the next 3 to 4 years. And then finally, I think one risk I cannot but not talk about is the climate risk. I think it is staring at us. We've already seen the trailer when the wheat output was hit. The frequency of weather-related disturbances are rising at an alarming pace. And the first casualty of that is agriculture throughout the world. And I think agriculture is most at risk, and people are trying to do various simulations on how it's going to impact us. So I would say that I think the addressing the climate issues from a medium-term perspective becomes a very critical factor. And even from an inflation perspective, it's a very important factor because there is something called climateflation. I mean, so I think people have already started talking about, even in European Central Bank, they are raising issue of raising the threshold level of inflation because the inflation is now going to be higher because of the climate factors. So I think so these are some of the challenges that we face. But I would say that if you put a gun to my head and say what's going to be the growth rate for next 5 years, I would still say 6.5% per annum. Reason is that there are some positive spillover effects of some of the reforms. Geopolitically, India is in somewhat better position to attract capex. Yeah, so I've been already warned that my time is out. And so I think let me close by saying that the 6.5% GDP growth will still trail your last decadal growth rate of 6.7% by a small number. So if you want to grow faster than that, I think there are too many ifs and buts in the global scenario. The new alliances, new blocks are being formed. So I think you can't be very decisive. If you make a projection, the range around that production is, which we call confidence interval, is very wide right now. And I think that's visible in all the forecasts that have been done in the last 2 years. Thank you very much for patiently listening.
On his behalf, let me thank Mr. Debashish Sen, because while we were sitting there, he said, Calcutta is looking beautiful. And I said, primarily because of Mr. Debashish Sen making Navodiganto do the right kind of work and making this part of Calcutta very beautiful, which I think we all agree. On that note, however, I have 2 questions to you. Infrastructure seems to be the prime mover. We had Mr. Nitin Gadkari addressing IACC in September and telling us that 65,000 kilometers is the Bharatmala, of which the income earned is about 1,40,000 crores from roads. He earns from toll around 40,000. I'd like to know in West Bengal, particularly the eastern region, because we are the corridor to Bangladesh, Myanmar, Nepal, Northeast. How much of that investment is coming here, and how much are you doing for the state? Are you going towards monetization of this, using tolls, using joint ventures, encouraging American investors to do this because they do it very well? One of my grouses against infrastructure in West Bengal is, although the roads look beautiful, they are quite like corrugated sheets, I mean, full of potholes. So what can you do to improve the surface area which we get in America? You know, you could clock, they never talk in kilometers. They say 6 hours drive from Washington to Baltimore, 3 hours. That about, they talk in hours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your kind words about making a township look good, better, and best. I am looking after 2 townships, Navodiganto, that is Sector 5, and also Newtown. Both I invite all of you to please come and visit how a modern, futuristic township should look like. I'll come to infrastructure. I'm talking about urban infrastructure, a field in which I have been working for the last decade or so. And I can say that while we all know that by 2030, 50% of India will live in the cities, are we doing enough? And I can show you what can be done, what is being done, how Newtown is a green, platinum-rated green city. It is one of the top 10 cycle-friendly cities. It is one of the top 2 digitally friendly smart cities. It is a happy city. It is a solar city. And we are keeping and winning awards for various kinds of things, including involvement of the citizens in developing. They are a part of it, and starting from Durga Puja to everything, we do it all together. Sir, I will say with humility that the roads in Bengal have really been improved. You talked about the distance between two cities in US. I can say in my district magistrate days, when I was DM of Birbhum with its headquarters in Shiuri, from Kolkata to Shiuri would take 6 hours. Today it takes 2.5 hours. And its road is so good, anybody has gone to Asansol, Durgapur, Holdia, Digha, it's absolutely fantastic roads. And now it is getting expanded also with the Asian Highway project of the Asian Development Bank, in which a regional in North Bengal, in Bhutan, in Sikkim, and lots of Dinajpur, a lot of new road networks are coming into being. And I will definitely say that in power, for example, we are surplus, we are very good in quality of power, which is one reason why a lot of data centers are now today coming to Bengal, to Newtown, to its Silicon Valley. We call it the Bengal Silicon Valley. In 2018, probably September, Economist brought an issue and wrote about how real estate prices in US Silicon Valley, California, Los Angeles, the main Silicon Valley, is rising. And they commented, had Larry Page and Lirin today been there and they wanted to start their Google in a garage, that garage renting itself costs for millions of rupees. No startup can afford the amount of real estate prices, the Economist says, today. So what is happening? What is happening, and I'm talking of 2018, what is happening is that a lot of technological inputs, lot of startups are moving away from the Bay Area to other portions of US. And now that the pandemic has happened, now that we know what is working from home means, now that Sector 5 where I work, 75% of the seats are always empty, yet productivity is going up. Productivity is going up. TCS and Infosys are making huge money. You can see that their balance sheets, and yet you don't find people in offices. So this phenomenon of telecommuting, of working away from home, has really gained a spurt. And with rising real estate prices in Singapore, in New York, in California, we stand a chance. We in Eastern India, with lots of electricity, with lots of good roads, with a fantastic first-class city that the government of West Bengal has built in Newtown, we are giving this Bengal Silicon Valley of 250 acres, of which 75% is now taken, which has an investment potential of 35,000 crores and 9,000 employment. And we are into huge number of applications. The Reliance for data center, the Adanis, the Tata Consultancy, Infosys, Wipro, everybody is started building, and you can see things coming up. This is the first point in this Indo-American convention. I was thinking to myself, what do I have to say? I have to say that think of the economist which points out that Silicon Valley is no longer friendly to startups. Think of the work from home phenomena. Think of the power surplus and great internet facilities that we have with the plethora of data centers coming up now in eastern part of India. This is where future lies in the matter of technology, in the matter of innovation, in the matter of startups, and I do make a call for anyone to have collaboration with our excellent team that is here. Nirupam Chaudhary is there of NASCOM. I'm sure he can elaborate, but we are geared up with all infrastructure for attracting the best talents and the best companies in the technological field. The other point that I would like to make is talking of Stanford. What we need from the US, and I'm talking from a city perspective, and what we see is that it has created a thermoelectric machine for solar panels. Solar panels, as we all know, we talk of climate change, we talk of global climate change, we talk of carbon dioxide, we talk of 500 gigawatts by 2030, we talk of all kinds of non-conventional sources of energy, and we have to save this planet. I have no two opinion on that. But with solar, in West Bengal, wind does not work, or except for Digha, we have a very short coastline, and in Calcutta and other places, wind is not very good. We are very poor in nuclear also. Our hydro is also not there, very little in Jaldaka in North Bengal. So where do we go? We have to only rely on solar. And in solar, the problem is, as all of us, even a child would say, when the sun goes down, the solar goes down. So what do? You store it in lithium batteries. Where do you get lithium? In South Africa. What is happening? Cost of lithium is increasing from $10 a ton to now, I think, $80,000 or more. It's depleting. It's not there. And is this sustainable development? You want to store your energy in electric vehicle, you are very happy, you are doing a great job for the environment, but probably the lithium and the thermal power that is coming is not really helping the global warming issue. You are burning coal. My colleague Sudipta Bhattacharya, a fantastic chairman, former chairman of Coal India, he revels in digging out coal and polluting the atmosphere. I am fighting for solar. I produce in Newtown 1.5 megawatts of energy from solar. Where do I place it? Land in Newtown is very costly, 30 crores of rupees per acre. So where do I go? I put it on the canal tops, and I put it on places where it is open to sky and not being used. And I am producing this, I am saving lakhs of rupees in my street light. I have to run my street light. So what I am saying is that lithium option of solar energy is not very good. What we need is that in night time also we must do something. And that is where America comes in. That is where Stanford comes in. They have got a thermoelectric machine that, what I understand, I can't say very details, but during the daytime the solar panel gets heated up. In the night time it radiates that heat, and with some temperature coefficient thermoelectric energy is produced. So you produce light also in the day, also in the night. Isn't that a fantastic thing? This is what we need. We need technology. Can you give us, America, can you come with us, tie up with us, put us in touch with Stanford, and we'll be the first city in the world to actually utilize the night time also for generating electricity. In short, the point I'm making is we need the US for advancement. Okay. The other point where we need is, I'd say, that New York. New York is the financial capital of the world. We all know that. We may have Hong Kong, we may have Singapore, we may have Tokyo, that is all very good. But New York is the capital, financial capital of the world. And in its wisdom, the government of West Bengal saw that the financial center of gravity is coming towards Asia. There is a study by the McKinsey Global Institute constituted in 2000, and it says that from the West, from Europe, the center of gravity of the financial world went to US, and now it's being drawn by China and Asia and Southeast Asia. So, therefore, the government of West Bengal in the year 2012, it founded the first financial hub of Eastern India in Newtown. And today, MD and chairman of Bandhan Bank is there. He is building two great buildings in the, we call it FinTech hub now. HDFC is building, Axis Bank is building, State Bank has already built, the National Insurance Corporation is built, and we are going to have a conglomerate that is very good, but still it's far, far, far behind the global level. So we need to collaborate. With this connected world, there's no problem in collaborating. Put us in touch with the New York, not only the stock exchange, not only the Wall Street, not only the players, but a huge amount of fintechs that is now ruling the world. We all use internet banking. We all use our Google Pays and Paytms. In India, 99% of the adult people are digitized through Aadhaar. And therefore, it is a wonderful opportunity of using fintech. And it is changing the world today. So we want the US, we want the financial capital of the world to come closer to us. We'll go to them. Would you please connect us, Honorable Consul General of US, and we would really love to go. We have been to the London district, they call it the financial capital, and we have had talks with them, we have got ideas, we are building with them, and we want to grow faster. The third and the last point I will say is this, and in Kolkata itself we have a Trump Tower. Like it or not, this is, even when he was the formidable president of US, the Trump Towers was being built in the private sector, nothing to do with the government. But we have the fantastic infrastructure in Newtown, and we are, from the government, putting out priceless real estate into the private sector. I talk about 5 acres of land in Alipur, where there is Taj Bengal, where there is National Library, where there is the zoo. That is cream of Kolkata, outside Newtown. We are handling it from HIDCO. 5 acres up for grabs. Another 2 acres going to come soon. More in the offing. We want other Trump Towers to come in. We are having people from Mumbai, but we want people from US. Where else do you get? I have already pointed out that more and more people are going to live in the cities. Where and land is real estate, you can't produce and manufacture land, and that too in the heart of a metropolitan city like Kolkata. And so therefore, I look at US investors to come and have a look. Already Mumbai is there. Calcutta real estate people are beaten already. Mumbai has come, go a bit west, cross the Suez Canal and the Pacific, and we have the US. So can we call them in? And therefore, not only in Newtown, where we are building also a vertical city on the lines of Twin Towers, and where there will be commercial, there will be retail, where there will be mercantile, and also space for residential. And we want investors there. We want investors in Nonadaga. We want investors in the real estate near EM bypass. We want investors back of Milan Mela. All lined up, all going to come. This is secret information, mind you. You should be happy you are here. It's not only 5 acres are in the public domain. Others are going to come. Be prepared. Don't worry. I will help you. So I only need that money. So thank you. Point is, we are, from the urban development point of view, looking at infrastructure. We have made very good infrastructure. In the urban world, Newtown and Nobodigonto, that is Sector 5, is one of the finest places to have everything that any world-class city can offer. Now we want people from US to help us in technology, help us in energy, help us in financial sector, and help us in real estate sector. The land, of course, will be yours. We just have to come. Thank you very much.
As far as I'm concerned, I complimented Mr. Debashish Sen for his administrative abilities. I realized that he should have been the marketing head of West Bengal. And I'm very happy the council has got business in Bengal, and I'm sure you're going to do justice to that. We'll celebrate over Christmas. Yes. Now I turn to the banker-in-chief, Bandhan Bank, CMD, Mr. Ghosh. Please let us know, how are you growing and what are you doing to tackle the informal sector, the grey economy, which has been, according to me, the bane for West Bengal. We are doing well, but it doesn't figure in the revenue, primarily because most of the resources
are not taxed. They come from the informal sector. I mean, if you buy a pair of shoes, you pay a GST. But if you buy a, say, couple of Hilsa fish, you pay nothing. So that tells you that there's a lot to tap. And how can the bank formalize the informal grey sector?
Good afternoon to all of you, respected Dr. Subbarao sir, and all the dignitaries in the dais. Very tough in front of Dr. Subbarao. I am talking. And it's good Dr. Mukherjee has been given the chance in other way to talk, not the economy talk. It has been saved to me in front of Dr. Rao. But I can be like to 2 point can mention the economy of India. 3 big parameters. All of the international entity are assessing that the Indian GDP growth will come not less than 7%. It is in 7, 8, 9. There is any economic country which can be like to predicted by them is near to India. So that India is a big economy. The future growth is a very big opportunities on that. And second point on that, the point of economy, there is an inflation. We are couple of years our practice always 5 to 6% inflation. And now it has been 7%, US is at 12%. So we are in a better position, all respect on that. So in that sense, if we see that what is the opportunities in India? India opportunities is a population. There is 130 crores in a population. 50% of the people are living another level which they are not getting the access of the credit from the formal financial institution. So what is their need? Their need is very small, and they have not any very formal papers which they can be like to prove to us their income in this much. So that is a big challenge to reach these people, but they need the money. And there is another point on that, they are asking the very quick money. So that they are dependent on traditional money lenders going to them and taking a very quick money without papers, and pay also regularly and higher interest rate. So I feel that is an opportunities of any bank model if can be prepared on that. The simplify the papers and simplify the guarantors and not asking that the income proof from the ITR or PAN card like on that maybe we can be provide the small credit to them, which is now saying that the informal, but not now they are not informal. They have the 100% of this customer have the bank account. All transaction they are done to receive the credit and repay the credit, all are by the transaction through the account. So that they are formally come on that. So my point on that, if we not go to start it on that, they will not come to this position. They may be like to lies on this, only depend on that money lenders. So someone should be come on that to do it and proved it within the 20 years Bandhan journey. So they are good repay and they are very good utilizer of the fund, and they have need the fund. There is a real people on that. Second point on that, out of those people, many of these enterprise has come out from their small type of business to the big business, and they are created the new employment. And I saw that there is a bank, we are now 1 crore 80 lakhs women customers, and they are borrower. And if many of them are created not only the business, they are created new employment also. If they employment created one of each of this enterprise, that called in that 1 crore 80 lakhs informal employment generated by these poor people. So this is a huge in that. So that when we are going to the rural, we see that their lifestyle have changed. They are using mobile phone. They are now very good way to sending the children to the school. English school is a very habit has come on that. So we feel that there is need to, not funding point of view, to change the life of these people. We have need to work of these people. We are feel proud. We are like to work with us. So this is the way Bandhan is doing on that. But because of Bandhan is a universal bank and pan-India based, we are not restrict only this segment. We are now segment also diversified. These people also, because of the income increase, the first demand of these people, I need my own house. How can we build up my house? They are going to give in a marriage to their son. They have needed an extra one room, bathroom. So their demand is coming differently now from business to the housing. That is also the different way. And then consumer demand gradually also increases. Till now, we are providing one loan to one customer. But it is not in a corporate sector or the big, large number of borrowers in India or outside of India. There's a minimum 2 to 3 loan per customer. So they are now coming also this way. So this is the growth we feel that is a future is coming. Final my point, this is not only the funding point of view, this is a social perspective on that. So when we talk to these people, they have changed their life, they have changed their education of their children. That is the one. Finally, their income, per capita income increase. So if the 50% of the people's per capita income increase in a smaller amount, the Indian per capita income will be contributed very high. So I hope that this can be like to look, not only Bandhan can possible to reach large number of Indian population, like 10 types of Bandhan bank is needed to focusing to those people which we are catering them to provide these financial services, and then economy will be like to come very different. Thank you to give understanding.
I would now turn to Mr. Shrutito Bhattacharya, the former CMD of coal. My question to you is actually, you've been asked to speak on mining and engineering. Lamint has a book on development economics where he would say that the hallmark of an underdeveloped country, a colonized economy, is mines and plantations. Same was the question I raised with Mr. Biju Patnaik when on an NCIR survey on problems of economic reforms. I asked him, but if you're asking an Australian firm to do an aeromagnetic survey to find out where there is gold, where there is coal, where there are diamond pipes, you're going back to the dirty technologies, which is the hallmark of colonialism. So when you refer to mines and plantations and coal and so on, you're actually looking at a dirty technology. What are you doing to see that this is environmentally sustainable? That's one question. The second is, how will this in any way change our export zone? And the point that I'm trying to make is if India has to increase the world export aid from 2% to 3.5%, then we have to increase the American share in our exports from $466 to $900 million. But India has now dropped out from 3 of the most favored treatments, partnerships. One is TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. India is no longer a member of that, which covers 40% of GDP growth and 1/3 of the world trade. The Trade in Services Agreement, TISA,
TISA, and EU-US Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, TTIP. So what can we do to see we get back on the map and get on these partnerships to promote our export trade? So two questions on one: how is mining going to help our exports? Isn't that a dirty technology? And what can we do to promote our exports unless we are in this partnership?
Thank you very much, Dr. Mukherjee. My old boss is here, Dr. Subbarao, because we belong to the same cadre. And my batchmate Deba has taken us by storm. I mean, Debashish Sen I am talking about. Wherever he speaks before, the feeling of the storm will always be there. And we have listened to important economists, and Mr. Chandrasekhar Ghosh, my dear friend, is a practitioner economist. And I am really looking forward to, of course, Tata Steel, but I am very much looking forward to NASSCOM in the end. Yes. Because I come from Andhra Pradesh, and they had been, I should say, the harbinger of change, right from the time of Rantala Chandrasekhar. I will definitely cover the mining a little bit, but I will cover it in a little bit more academic sense of the term, because having been associated with energy sector and been incidentally associated with Singarani Colliery and Coal India, two only independent coal companies in India, I will talk about a little bit of coal, which is also important for Bengal. As you know, when we are talking of the Indo-American promotion and the perspective, the inaugural session was extremely good, and of course this session, I won't like to pass value judgment, but I would remember Mr. Kaul setting up the agenda, which is also found there: energy, ecology, environment. And I thank and compliment the Chamber of Commerce for flagging the issue in its correct perspective. All of you are aware that US is one of the countries with whom our balance of trade is quite positive, and we had been growing very fast, particularly in the last 2 years. And although we do not figure to be, minus the service, we do not figure to be the most prominent importer in the context of US, but combined trade, it is one of the most important countries so far as India is concerned. Having said that, I will leapfrog and come to the context of mining in the perspective of US. The major mineral that we talk of under the Mining Act that is very much required for energy, I'm sure that when Tata Steel comes, they will talk about the deficit of coking coal and the problem that India faces. I will leave that platform to them, and I will not like to get into that. But I will keep this on focus: energy and environment. So what will happen to coal? And what is happening in coal? The coal production had been going up, albeit perhaps, as the recent past had shown, a little bit less slowly than what was required. US had become a source of import for our coal. The kind of coal that we have in India, to get for it an export market in a regular basis is almost impossible because of the low calorific value and high ash coal, but that is mostly the coal that we have. Only in Bengal and the southeastern coal field in Chhattisgarh, we have better quality of coal. But at the same time, our coal does not have that high level of sulfur that Indonesian coal has. But from the coal economy, if we have to see how the coal is value added. Value added is in the thermal generations, and that has singular contribution to pollution. By coal mining itself, when we do underground mining, by doing the coal mining itself, we add methane. But when we burn coal, we add CO2, we add SOx, we add NOx. So with the energy development, when India was in 3 digital energy consumption on per capita basis, we are right now on 4 digital consumption, but we are still much, much less compared to other countries in the world. And we have only one way to go up, up and up in energy consumption. So the challenge is how to consume more energy by maintaining environment. And that's where the collaborations can take place. That's where the new technologies and focused technologies can come in. Both India and US, they depend upon strip mining. We call in India open cast mining, in US they call it strip mining. And that means we remove the earth, we expose the coal, we extract the coal, which is not the best way of doing it. Australia does not do it. China also does underground, although safety is a major issue in Chinese mining. So that is where we come to a technology collaboration concepts, which is going on in Bengal, which is going on in Chhattisgarh, in development of coal, and also development of methane, coal bed methane, coal mining methane. I think time is really short. Then there is a technological high wall, where ecologically we can extract coal, which coal is not possible to extract economically and ecologically. That coal can be extracted economically and ecologically through the method of high wall mining. And high wall mining, US is the leader. And in India, there are only 2 places this high wall mining is done. One is in Telangana, in southeastern, in Singrani Colliery, and another in southeastern coalfield in Chhattisgarh. So these collaborations, washing of coal, it is called coal beneficiation, which will take away the ash of the coal, reduce the pollution. There also the collaboration is possible, and the joint venture methods are possible. And Coal India is working on that. Both USA and Australia, they are the leaders in this technology. People had talked I think Vandana spoke in the inaugural session about the fracking, the horizontal drilling, which the US has completely become an expert in that. It can be done, and US is also addressing itself to the water conservation. The criticism of shale gas and the fracking methodology is the water use efficiency or inefficiency and the consequent contamination. That issue is being addressed, and if that issue is being addressed, then the Krishna Godavari field, there are fields in the coal fields where this fracking is possible. This technology collaboration is possible. I'm getting into the practical collaborative method. And if we do that, then export is possible. If we can get ecologically and economically, EE factor, then only the E factor, the export factor is possible. And that is possible by technology augmentation, by duly keeping in mind the needs of ecology. There are mining machinery production. There are 2 models in mining machinery. Big machinery, which we may require, and India may become the hub instead of China. And this can be exported into many other areas, including Africa, which are going to be the hub of future mining. But the main thing is we must remember both carbon and hydrocarbon. has a life now. We may be coming to the sunset areas. So the basic issue, there will be disruption. And the handling of disruption is one issue with which US has handled their economy well. In fact, the train line between San Jose to San Francisco is commonly referred to as the line of disruption, notwithstanding the fact that Tony Sheba teaches in the vicinity. So these disruption and how to handle disruption is the issue that India has to face. And whether you like it or not, disruption is likely, disruption shall happen. And our economy, our thinking, our response has to be resilient enough to take care of those disruptions. That means we are talking of transition. We are talking of transition to less carbon, less hydrocarbon economy. And that is why in 2015 in the Paris Agreement we talked about just transition. And that is one area where very active collaboration will be required between India and other countries, and US is one of the premier countries which can help in India in doing the just transition. And West Bengal is an area where it will be required because there will be a transition in the areas of Birbhum, in the areas of Paschim Bardhaman, and we'll have to, as Debashis pointed out, we'll have to go for substitution. Like US is going, now you have all read the components of the Inflation Reduction Act which has become a law. And the new technologies are going to come. Mines are going to be centers for solar generation. The nuclear modular nuclear technology is likely. Fusion money, there will be investment in fusion technology for nuclear. You might have seen in European Union, they are trying to treat the nuclear energy also as a green energy. So friends, energy storage, like, I think Debashis only talked about how you give light, how you get energy in the night when the sun is not there. In the world, the forecast is wind energy, which had come in the beginning, by the time solar became cheaper, is likely to become cheaper again with new technology development, stunted technology, stunted turbine development, and offshore wind technology development, cheaper transmission technology development. And that is also not exactly the blue economy that has been talked about, but will be put up in the blue area of the country where the offshore wind can take place. So there will be solar, there will be offshore, there will be rooftop solar, which has caused huge disruption in most parts of the world. Almost 180 distribution companies have gone out of business. And these are the things which are likely to come to India. These are the things which will happen over the next decade. And in every disruption, it means old order changeth, yielding place to the new. And God fulfilled himself in many ways, to quote Lord Tennyson. And I'm sure this Chamber of Commerce will be in the new. The innovators who are sitting here, the entrepreneurs who are sitting here, they will find out the areas of new and will create the synergy in collaboration with the technology developers in the world and will make our economy proud. And that is how, in the collaborative economics, they will participate. The skilling will be an area where we'll have to work together. If there was no Microsoft certified course, do you think software export would have stood where we are? Do you think San Jose would have been one? Every 4 people, there is one Indian in San Jose. That's the statistics. It won't have happened. So the skill certification is one area where we'll have to work together. And already many of the academic courses are seamless, including legal courses, Juris Doctorate. The Indian universities offer collaborative Juris Doctorate courses. Indian BTech can go and do an MS and PhD seamlessly in the United States of America. That's the kind of seamless skill transition we'll have to do. And I'm sure that all of us, if we work together, the vibrant, most populous, the democratic center of the world and oldest democracy, both the governments and both the systems building of the people, by the people and for the people will integrate themselves and will create the new world which everybody will be envious of. Let us believe in ourselves. Let us believe in our capacity. We did not take any exemption from WTO and UNCTAD for some of our neighboring countries, but we still are where we are today. And we have only one way to go. We have the proactive, collaborative, synergic way of moving forward, and that we shall. As one US president said, what we can and that we shall. And that's the commitment let us commit ourselves to. There are areas of collaboration, and these two countries cannot just but collaborate for the betterment of the world. Thank you very much.
I think we are moving on the right trend of looking at a cleaner world, and we are moving on the world of sustainability. There are two issues that I'd like to call upon the person from Tata, Mr. Sanjeev Paul. You're speaking on health and sustainability, so I'd like your ideas of occupational health and hazards. What is Tata doing about it? How can US help us in that regard? Particularly with regard to the traffic policemen, paint workers, welders. What is the thinking on occupational health? On sustainability, my question is very clear. We are now moving into the circular economy. You know, if you look at it in terms of the CE fields is take, make, distribute, use and reuse. And if you look at the parameters, economic performance, environment performance, socio-economic performance, it is seen, and circular economy really is how to reduce waste, how to reduce, bring in greater economic and environmental performance. The idea is when it comes to take, use and make, they act, they do help. But on distribution and reuse, there's hardly any thinking in India. I know, as I was mentioning, in US they have a lot where they use waste as a resource. Is Tata, and I'm particularly close to Tata because I was in XLR for some time and I know Aditya Kapoor. What initiatives have you taken to develop your ancillaries? Because together the ancillaries pollute more than the large ones. The small are greater polluters than the large. What is your take on that? MSN.
Thank you, Dr. Mukherjee. Esteemed panel, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me thank the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to speak at such a esteemed forum. Mr. Kaul, Mr. Nakul Kamani, who is the chairman of the Jharkhand chapter, I believe, a very dear friend who probably got misled by some of our interactions that we have in the safe and secure confines of our drawing room, where I wax eloquently on subjects like economics and geopolitics. I would dare not do that in front of this esteemed panel, where I'm sure I wouldn't get away the way I would do that in the drawing rooms of Nakul and my own confines. I'm a humble steelmaker and a bit of a sustainability professional, as I've been introduced. And I will look at this collaboration between our two great nations from that prism. In the last 75 years since our independence, India has managed to ramp up its steel capacity to around 107 odd million tons. The world produces 1.8 billion tons. So this is just around 6 or 7% of the total world steel production. China produces half of it at around 850 to 900 million tons. But that has been the story so far. Going forward, in the next 25 to 30 odd years, most think tanks in the world, including the International Energy Agency, the Energy Transition Commission, the World Economic Forum, you name them, they believe in the next 25 to 30 odd years, our steel capacity will ramp up from the current 100 million odd tons to 450 odd tons by 2050. This is unprecedented growth. 300 to 350 million tons in the next 25 to 30 years means around 10 million tons per annum on a consistent basis. Now, is that a pipe dream? Apparently not. Tata Steel today produces around 20 million tons of steel. We have concrete plans to ramp it up to 40 million tons by the end of this decade. The government of India, the Steel Ministry, plans to ramp up the steel capacity of India to around 300 million tons by the end of this decade. Whilst the second target might look a bit difficult, but if we are going to grow by 20 million tons, we command a 15% market share, which means that at least 140 more million tons is coming. Again, unprecedented growth. This would be great news if it wasn't for the fact that steel produces 2.5 tons of carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas per ton of crude steel that it produces. Whilst today, that 2.5 tons per ton is just 7% of the total greenhouse gas that is produced in the world. But the way the rest of the industry is decarbonizing, this will very soon, by 2035, be around 35% of the total global greenhouse gas emission. Now, this is an existential problem for the world, not just for the steel sector. When we say that 1 billion ton of steel capacity costs around $1 billion to be set up and has a life around 40 years, we in India are going to lock up highly fossil fuel intensive steel industry, which will be producing greenhouse gas to a large extent by 2030, which is going to stay with us till 2070. And we have ambitions to become net zero by 2070. Now, these are problems that need to be solved. Mr. Chandrasekhar spoke about 1.3 billion Indians, most of which are below poverty line. And as a country, we have ambition to grow and take them above the poverty line. This ambition will need energy. I'm hoping that this collaboration between our two great nations, the largest democracies of the world, will find solutions for a fair and just transition to meet the ambitions of peoples of both the country. And I'm hoping that collaborations like this will take us there. Will not take too much of your time standing between you and lunch. Thank you so much for listening to me patiently.
One element which remains to be covered is our experience with joint ventures, particularly with regard to US. Even if you don't want to throw light on that, I would request Mr. Nirupam Chaudhary to dwell into what is your take on the stock market, the future, and our relationship with America in this regard.
Very good afternoon. I totally realize that I stand between lunch and you. But of course, it has been a real privilege to be part of the panel, and it would go into my CV perhaps that I was in this panel. So such was the erudite panel. Coming to NASSCOM, and of course, taking a clue from some of the words that we have heard from Melinda in the morning, Yadav, and also Devashish Sen and others, it is safe to say that the last couple of years has really opened up our eyes as to what information technology can do across sectors. It's not just a sector, but it's totally how it has transformed the way we combated COVID, right? This is just one example. I will take some examples of Indo-US collaborations in these lines, as Melinda touched in the morning. In July this year itself, we had some very interesting conversations in US, in Wilson Hall, in the areas of information technology, how two countries are collaborating and what should be the roadmap for future. Few important points out of that, because we are talking about economics and we are talking about contribution of Indian IT sector in US as well as implications of that in India, right? We all know about the India's IT story. There is nothing more to say to you guys because you would know about it. But I guess many of you would not know that the Indian companies who are actually operating and working with American corporations in US soil and other parts, they are contributing to more than $200 billion in the US economy itself. Not only in terms of direct contribution, induced contribution, and indirect contribution. Let me just give a simple example. When a guy who is actually working with a restaurant in US, he's helping that guy to generate sales. He's basically buying a lease line or an internet service provider. But the internet service provider in terms is actually employing people in US. Those guys, in turn, are actually spending money on groceries and other stuff in US. So there is a direct implication in the economy, per se. So sometimes we get baffled with some comments that, we hear a lot about the term outsourcing. But really, if you look at the implications, it has been tremendous. Just day before yesterday, I was talking to one of the companies in Sector 5 itself in Kolkata. Mr. Sen already touched upon what we are doing in Sector 5 without repeating that. In Eastern region, we are seeing a plethora of companies coming down to Kolkata and the adjoining areas, not only from the skills perspective, but also for looking for high-end talent, right? So going to the US parts, now, even if you look at, I was talking about the company from Sector 5, this company is actually working with the top 3 vaccine manufacturers in US who were working, to racing against time to get that solved for us, right? So this is the kind of contribution that's happening from India. Now, if you look at, we touched upon certain areas where we heard about cryptocurrencies, we heard about quantum computing, we heard about certain terms which have both faces, right? Now, when you say quantum computing, of course, quantum computing in one hand is actually solved the process of the vaccine puzzle, as well as many other puzzles which would normally take a huge amount of time, but it's actually solving in a very short duration. At the same time, we need to be very conscious, and that's the collaboration which is also happening with the US, the dialogue which is going on in the US is that how we make better software and products which are not only affordable, inclusive, safe, at the same time they should be, they should not create more problems for us, right? So they should not intrude on privacy. We should make sure that our senior citizens, when they get fraudulent calls from different parts of the world, or even it's all across, so that we solve those problems as to we should not create problems with technology. That is one key policy change which is going to come in. So every software or product which is being developed, there is a supreme importance on the cybersecurity angle. There is extreme importance on how we talk about tech, but how many, and we right from morning we heard about so many people in the agriculture sector and other sectors who even don't have this leave apart smartphone, they don't have a basic phone even perhaps. So how do you conquer the digital divide? So there are some guys, I mean, privileged lot like us, who are in this room, who are able to take maximum advantage of technology and solving problems for ourselves. But there is a huge class of, I mean, if you talk about Indians, not only Indians, but also all across the world, there's a class of people who are not able to take due advantage of technology. How do you solve those problems? How do we become inclusive? How do we make sure that, I mean, we right from morning, we heard about amazing stories from our state itself. Many of you would not know that there are so many clusters in West Bengal, and we are privileged to work with the MSME clusters. There are amazing things being done in the handicrafts area, jewelry, textiles. There are tremendous opportunities if these guys who are actually working as low-wage earners in the villages, they are only earning about 300 to 500 rupees a day. How do we improve that situation? So there comes the role of technology itself, where we're also trying to work along with them to make sure that they reach customers better. Their leads are more. They are able to reach other geographies. How do they reach better geographies? How do they leverage digital marketing? They would not understand the digital marketing, right? But someone has to talk their language to convey that particular matter to them, that how they can leverage so that the overall sales increases, and in the effect, the economic benefits increase. At the same time, their wages increase. So we are not from NASSCOM. We are not only working on a grassroots levels, the middle part of the pyramids, but also with top corporations to see how do we make these changes happen. We right from morning, you also heard about sustainability, ESG. We heard about environment, clean energy. In all these areas, it is extremely important that technology doesn't give only importance to earning dollars for the companies who are contributing, but also solving human problems. And in all these areas, I think there is a tremendous opportunity across both our nations that we work together. I'll just give one small example before I stop. In areas like Texas, Texas and some areas of US, generally in Texas we know about Texas Arlington, right? So basically we believe that the IT knowledge perhaps is very good, but it was not like that even a few years back. It is due to the advent of a lot of companies that have gone from other parts of India, including other parts of the world, including India, that the literacy level of the IT skilled people have increased a lot over time. And there's a testimony from the reports which are being generated right now, that beyond the top centers in US, even in other areas, the skill levels are increasing, which in turn is contributing to better contribution from the workforce and better collaboration with the IT workforce to solve problems for US, the world, and of course India. So these are the few things, I guess, at various levels, IT is touching lives, and we definitely don't see it as just another sector, but it's going all across. My compliments to IACC, Dada, and everyone. It has been truly a fantastic experience. We're running against time, but I guess the session stops here, but the questions that were raised by the elite panelists here would be in your minds, and we would try to convey this to our peer groups. Thank you so much.
Well, all said and done, we had a very limited time, but we have been able to keep our time. 2:30 was the time set for your lunch, and I know you got your hunger pangs. And let me leave you with the rainbow that up now all the 7 speakers have spoken. I can understand you've been dazed by the brilliance of it. And on that note, after the rains, thank you on behalf of the panelists for being so patient. I call upon Mr. Shujoy to come and give the vote of thanks on behalf of IACC. Dr. Shujoy Abhishek.
Good afternoon to you all. Thanks for the patient listening, but at the same time, I understand myself that this has been a very enriching session. A session which is worth remembering for a very long time. And what Dr. Shuman Mukherjee, one of the legends of the field, moderating the session, setting a pace to the session, did something. And who else would have been the best to start? And I thank with him. That's Dr. Subbarao, former Governor, Reserve Bank of India, setting the tone. Spoke on every items. Then Mr. D.K. Joshi from CRISIL, Economics and CRISIL. Mr. Debashish Sen, always projecting Calcutta and West Bengal to the best of his ability in every platform, which he did right now. Shumanda said, corrugated streets, and Mr. Sen corrected that. Shumanda streets have improved a lot, but there's a lot to be done. But at least let us go by the positive vibes which can be created right at this point of time. Mr. Sanjeev Paul, Vice President, Safety, Health and Sustainability, Tata Steels Limited. I started my career with M. Dastur and Company, the largest steel plant consultant in the world, and we were consultants to TISCO for a very long time, and it was said that a country's growth is measured in terms of its steel production. And steel production is increasing in leaps and bounds, and the country is set to attain the position that's desired. Mr. Shutirtha Bhattacharya, I had met him during one of the India Today conclaves when he was the CMD of Coal India, spoke of coal and spoke of environment. And my friend, Mr. Nirupam Chaudhary, Regional Director, NASCOM. Nirupam had been very visible, very promoting of Calcutta and West Bengal. No thanks is good enough for Dr. Shuman Mukherjee, who is there in the industry for the last 5 decades, I think. I'm there for 3.5, so he must be in for the 5 decades. And last but not the least, Melinda Pavek, the Consul General of the United States, and Bandana Gupta, the IS, who just adorned the session and opening words. I would not be complete if I don't thank Mr. Kapil Kaul, who had been the national president, who had been by our side always with the Eastern India Council. And sir, I put on my heartfelt thanks on behalf of the committee to be by us always. Mr. Anup Acharya, the president, he had right from the day he had taken up the job last year, he had kept no stones unturned so that every session of EIC gets something which adds a delta X to that. And I pledge that we all pledge that we will put all support to him so that in the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce gets the relevance that it had and would go to newer heights. And Mr. Jhajar, my second vice president, Mr. Jhajar, had been very supportive of each and every one. And then each and every member of Eastern India Council, each and every member, the executive committee members, as well as each and every member who had been a source of strength, a source of support, not only during this time, but during the time of COVID also. Our membership didn't reduce, it increased. And I hope in coming years, we'll be one of the best chambers that people will follow upon. Thank you, sir, for giving us the opportunity. Thank you.
But just one last request. We have all our esteemed panelists on stage, along with our regional president, Mr. Anup Acharya, the national president, Mr. Kapil Kaul, our regional vice president, Mr. R.K. Chhajar, Mr. Rajendra Khandelwal, our second vice president, Dr. Sujoy Biswas, the president, incoming president for ISCC Eastern Region, and we do not have Vandana Yadav with us, but thank you everyone for giving us the time. And just one last photograph. Can I quickly also have the mementos on stage for our respected panelists, please? Can we have Dr. Sujoy Biswas kindly felicitate Mr. D.K. Joshi? Can Mr. Khandelwal has given it to Mr. Mr. Vasant Subramaniam. Can we request our former national president, Mr. Vasant Subramaniam, to come on stage and felicitate Mr. Debashish Sen, please? Mr. Subramaniam, do we have Mr. Debashish Sen here? Mr. Debashish Sen? Please come up on stage, please. If you can just please. He's a former national president, Mr. Vasant Subramaniam. Yes. Can we please ask Mr. R.K. Chajer, our vice president, to please felicitate Dr. Subba Rao? Mr. Chajer, if you can kindly felicitate Dr. Subba Rao. For Dr. Subba Rao. No, he's not left. He's eating. He's coming. No, he hasn't. I spoke to him just now. Can we have past President Mr. Shudipto Das on stage to felicitate Mr. Sanjeev Paul? Mr. Das? Can I please request our immediate past President Regional, Mr. Barun Banerjee, to be up on stage to felicitate Dr. Shumon Mukherjee? Can I please have the mementos for Dr. Shumon Mukherjee? Mr. Banerjee, if you can please felicitate Dr. Shumon Mukherjee. Mr. স্টেজে ছিল সব এলো এক্ষুনি এলো Debashish Sen Mr. Debashish Sen না খাচ্ছে he left so his things So can I please request Mr. Vasant Subramaniam to felicitate Mr. Nirupam Chaudhary, Regional Director East of NASSCOM. Can I please have the mementos for Mr. Nirupam Chaudhary? He is being felicitated by our former National President, Mr. Vasant Subramaniam. Mr. Shudipto Das, our former President Regional, can I please request you, sir, to just take a picture because Mr. Sen has left. Can I please have all our committee members present on stage to please be there for a photograph? Mr. Banerjee, if you can please come up, sir. Shamushridi, please. Please. So, Mr. Shudipto Das, can you please felicitate Mr. Shuditha Bhattacharya, former CMD Coal India? Can I please have the mementos for Mr. Shutitha Bhattacharya, please? Mr. Sudipto Das, if you can please felicitate Mr. Shutirtha Bhattacharya, CMD Coal India. Can we have a last picture of everyone together, please? Everyone on stage. Dr. Mukherjee, if we can request you to come on stage once for the photograph, please. Thank you everyone, thank you. You all stayed for a long time. Please enjoy your lunch.